absolute light in the darkness that first game was. It really brought light into my eyes, and luckily, Mifflin, you and I were casting that one. It was a long, long set, and I would say the chair I'm sitting on, the Maxonomic chair, is lit. And this is the lighter costume I'm in from way back when. The Maxonomic chair is absolutely lit. It'll be the light of your eyes as well, and you'll never feel lighter sitting here in the Maxonomic chair. I'm not sure what. There we go. I'm looking out of the right one. That's right. Use code SMITEMAX. You get an official ward when you order the official SMITE chair. That's the one I'm sitting in here. And hey, it can fit me in a lighter costume that I wore to Halloween when I was in like 5th grade. So thumbs up to Maxonomic. It's absolutely lit, as the kids say. So get one now. Mifflin, I can't take this thing off, so we're doing this death segment with me sitting in here, and what a first set we had, and I cannot wait to get into set 2. Dude, the head's falling off. This is chaos.
Dave, you gotta take it off, man.
I can't. I'm stuck. Mifflin, I'm stuck. You gotta work with me here. We gotta talk about Sanguine versus eUnited. We started off with Radiance versus Obey, and what a set that was specifically for Obey. To really come back into things here and get some momentum going on their side. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's going to take me a little bit longer, I think, to get this one going here. So we'll move in, I think, to Sanguine versus eUnited here, Mifflin, and what expectations are for this set. I mean, eUnited, it's got to be tough for them, right? I mean, they make 3 roster swaps, or 2 technically, 1 role swap, so this is a big first game for them to be able to look forward to, especially with this new look roster.
Yeah, it's a heat check for eUnited, no doubt. I mean, if you're looking for a day of upsets, I think this is definitely the one. Obey kind of paves the road. They walk so eUnited can run. The brand new eUnited roster is looking good, man. I mean, Baskin out of the solo lane. We're looking for a little bit of a solo dip here. We know he's the king. He's been hailed as one of the greats. He hasn't been in the SPL for a while now, so I think it's gonna be a good return for him here, Dave. Good God, man. Good God, Dave.
Look, we're in it. We're in it.
Snoopy back in the hunter role. He's gonna be doing real good over there. But there's still a lot of question marks. Some people are questioning the decision to put Guy J on the bench, whether or not that would be good in the long term or the short term. I think we could all agree that Snoopy, at least himself, is going to be much more comfortable in this role. He's been struggling a little bit on support in the past, so I think, if anything, eUnited is one of the most improved teams from the roster changes coming through most recently. There's a lot that they got to work through. I mean, just changing up your players isn't going to be enough to completely change up how this team plays. They struggled a little bit with drafts in the past, positioning, shot calling, but with Baskin in that leadership role, maybe that cleans up a lot of it.
Yeah, I agree. That's going to be the big pivot here. It's going to be the big pivot here for this United squad. And I want to look at Sanguine here as well, Mifflin. I mean, these guys, I was able to talk to them a little bit during the break, and they admittedly didn't take much of a break. This Sanguine squad has been known for their ability to just kind of get into game, get in game prep state, and I imagine they'll have done their research going up against this United team.
Sanguine doesn't take breaks. I mean, you said it yourself. If we're playing SMITE at 3 a.m. casuals, there's like a 30% chance that you're going to queue into a 5-stack of all the Sanguine boys playing, not just for fun, but they're playing meta picks. I queued up at 4 a.m., and I got to play against Yamoja, Freya, the Panatom playing like his signature Mercury.
That's right.
These guys are constantly grinding, but up against eUnited, they might get to flex their early game muscles a little bit. That's traditionally where United struggles, whereas Sanguine as a team traditionally likes to wait for that 30-minute mark, waits for that real true 5-on-5 engagement phase. We'll see how both teams try to adjust to a lot of differences here. United's a little bit more of a wild card. I'm not sure how Sanguine's going to decide to ban out what's coming through for them.
How about that, though? The Freya ban first overall, that's something that Guy J was very comfortable with in his time with the team, and still feeling like that's a threat, even with Snoopy rotating over to that role. I wonder, and I'm curious, Mifflin, to your point, how maybe Gino is going to fall into that ban status as far as Sanguine feeling comfortable one way or another with what gods Gino is attempting to play. It's a whole new duo lane look for all of these SPL teams to figure out how to play against. So interesting is almost an understatement to see where Sanguine's level of prep is, especially for these picks and bans. Oleron taken away as well. We saw, even in a loss, what Cyclone Spin could do on the Oleron, so I think smart here for Sanguine, smart banning, and now the Nemesis takes the seat as well. No qualms for me on either side.
Yeah, it just seems like it's traditional meta bans coming through here, Dave. I think
wrong, man?
Gino himself is going to be a little bit more of a wild card, right? But we got some data points on him recently in the SEC weekend. He was able to play through, and he's the type of dude who likes to play gods like Yamoja. He'll bring the Erlang Shen into the support role as well. He really facilitates his team through an aggressive playstyle, almost as a secondary jungler. We'll see if that's something he decides to keep up with as he meshes with this new team here of the United. I can't imagine they've had a ton of time to practice, considering just last weekend, both Baskin and Gino were competing in the SEC.
I love this look as well. The Amaterasu out of the solo lane for Sanguine. Allow, get yourself some pressure maybe on Baskin early on here. Immediately call his number and see if he can step up to the plate. But eUnited answer back with the Rom and Snoopy's time in that role. A little sweaty here, as you can tell. The suit is somehow miraculously hot. It's wood and cardboard, and somehow it's very toasty. Rom as well, though. Very good look here for eUnited. And then a Kuzumbo. You want to talk about long lane pressure. That's one way to get it done.
Yeah, that fits Gino's playstyle to the bill. He wants to get in front of the enemy mid laner. He wants to disrupt the backline and create space for his team. Rom and a Kuzumbo together obviously going to get a lot of pressure in that long lane, so they've already established a pretty good lane for themselves if they're trying to mesh with these new players. Snoopy, again, returning to the Hunter role. Gino, brand new to the eUnited roster. I think that as far as comfort picks go, eUnited have done a good job of locking them down for themselves. But Sanguine, likely coming out a little bit ahead as far as meta picks, I was going to say, until this Terra got locked in. That's an interesting pick in itself. I think it's likely going to the support role. It's got very good counter matchups into Kuzumbo. Terra drops the Earthen Fury, and then Kuzumbo goes into that Beyblade ultimate. Those small tick damages are going to create a huge burst heal for the team. And then a spicy Tsukuyomi. I'm not sure where this is going to go, man.
All right, Mifflin, our resident jungle main. Tell me what you see in the Tsukuyomi. Is it worth picking? It's been banned out all throughout the day today, but Panatom's going to, well, I say Panatom, to your credit, I guess we don't know where these teams prioritize this pick, but has been in the jungle traditionally, I suppose, as much tradition as there is. But Tsukuyomi, what do you think? Obviously worth a pick here.
I think that Tsukuyomi in of itself is a very volatile pick at the higher level of play. The one thing that shuts down a Tsukuyomi is concentrated team efforts to prevent him from getting his damage output out, right? If you have your Aegis or damage immunity, you can completely mitigate his ultimate. If you have any form of CC, you can shut down the second ability. I think that Tsukuyomi's best role is likely within that soul lane just because of his poke potential in lane. The ability to control that matchup a little bit more easily makes it much more easy to execute on him over there. But Sanguine has not flexed this Amaterasu into the jungle before, so I think you're right to point out that it is likely going into the jungle. Damage output, Tsukuyomi's got it. The ability to lock down an enemy team, Tsukuyomi's got it. Mobility and survivability, that's where Tsukuyomi's really lacking. And with a CC already coming forth from United's draft, be it through Kuzumbo or through Thor, is going to make it very hard for the Tsukuyomi to operate once we get to that team fight phase.
I think interesting on Sanguine's last couple of bans, though, the Janus does not raise any eyebrows, especially up against Hurrywind. Morgan and Hell, of course, for United. But the Vamana pick, that's not a pick, Mifflin, that we've seen buy all that much draft stock here as of late. So why does Sanguine maybe take that one away?
You know what? If I had an answer, I'd give it to you, because I could say if we knew about United Soul Laner that maybe it's a comfort pick, but Baskin's been playing mid for the last 2 years. This is his return back to the Soul Lane. I mean, if maybe they went back and watched some of Baskin's older clips back when he was a Soul Laner in the SPL, and he was pretty dominant on that pick about 3 or 4 years ago. But Vamana's gone through a lot of revisions. He's got some changes. Itemization changes have really shifted up that god. Maybe they're worried about his ability to dive into the backline and disrupt what Sanguine was going to go for, which is this Merlin.
Wow.
It creates the space for him. Merlin has a traditionally bad matchup in a Vamana, so maybe they're just trying to address that before it gets down to it.
And it's wild to me that teams who are going up against Sanguine continue to give Shinto these 9th/8, 9, 10 pick Merlins. I mean, obviously, there's a lot, maybe higher priority in the draft, but Merlin, this late on, definitely a strong point for Sanguine than the Jingwei there as well. But Isis, she gets locked in out of the mid lane, maybe out of the mid lane. I would assume there, Mifflin.
Hope so.
What do you think of the United draft rounding out with the Isis?
It's pressure on pressure on pressure. It's almost like something you would expect Ghost to run, where Isis should be able to control the lane pressure in mid almost single-handedly. Wing Gust obviously going to be the best push ability in the game right now. I mean, Thor out of the jungle the second he ticks over to level 5. Anvil of Dawn going to control the pace of this game. eUnited put a timer. They have to win before 30 minutes, so otherwise Sanguine's going to outscale.
Well, I'm going to go take this ridiculous thing off. Sanguine versus the new look eUnited. Game number 1. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, take a breather there, Dave, as we Smite fans clasp our hands in prayer at the return of our God King, Baskin, over in the solo lane. On the other side, Panatom will be piloting the Tsukuyomi, so a lot to talk about coming into this matchup. Sanguine, a team that's not afraid to play exactly what they think is the best thing in the game. We know they will just auto-pick it. Do you think Tsukuyomi's worth taking here at this point in the draft? How do you like it?
Yeah, I think it's worth experimenting with. I don't know, to be honest with you, Finch, because assassins are the hardest class to evaluate in my mind, because what they want to do is very one-dimensional. They want to kill you, and they have very little. They all have very unique counterplay options, and so figuring out how to counterplay a Tsukuyomi is going to take time, and we've seen that. I think players have gotten a lot better, and finding his counter picks is going to be a big part of that. And Hurwin's found an interesting one here with the Isis. I think that's a main reason why we see the Isis is because of that Tsukuyomi. Kusarigama, the 2, is a huge part of what makes his character do a lot of his damage, bring a lot of his kill potential, and if you can silence that or spirit ball that, it's going to make your life a lot easier. If when he uses that ultimate, you then get a chance to use your Isis ult, it's going to make it a lot easier to kill him on the back end and make sure that you survive with that damage mitigation.
He's got a ton of options. I know he does lack in mobility, but he's got some range, the ability to get some ranged basics, essentially, the slows with the caltrops. Once he's got the piercing moonlight ultimate, the ability for him to catch up to you, nigh unstoppable. Now, you have some options even to counterplay there if you're able to use the Aegis and prevent him closing that gap in on you, but it's a tight window, a tricky one to try and pull off, and I think Panatom is one of those junglers that can show it to us, man. You know for sure that Sanguine has been in the lab, filling up beakers, running the math, making sure that this pick works for him. So if they're bringing it in here, then I've got some faith in them. It's just that they're up against this new look eUnited with Snoopy back in Hunter, Gino stepping up to play support, and Baskin here in solo. So this one really is, in my mind, a toss-up, and what a great test for this eUnited right out of the gate, right? Is playing up against Sanguine, one of the best we have here in the SPL.
Yeah, I don't know if they're as excited about it as we are to get tested against some of the best right away, but I'm just excited that my Baskin to SPL summoning ritual worked, and that's why
right.
Our God King, as you put it, has returned. Just the amount of presence that I think that he brings to a team, not just on the battlefield, things like getting Vamana banned away, which has been his signature pick and solo basically his whole career, but just what he does for a team leadership perspective, you know, listening to the comms that he brings and the way that he wants to control the map, it's really, really valuable. And I think the best one-to-one comparison is look at the improvement that Obey has made underneath Sino. They're similar players in the sense that they control a lot of how they want to play and how their team wants to play around them.
Maybe a little bit of trouble over here in the long lane, but Gino able to avoid the most of it. That was him getting aggressive and perhaps getting a little bit more punishment on the return than he was looking for. But I think that you're right to point out that it is easy to undervalue and overvalue what bringing on one additional member can do here. But this is not quite their scenario, right? A lot has shifted to United. They're pretty close to just being a whole new team, considering Snoopy's changing roles, Gino is a new member, Baskin's a new member, and how does that affect the way that Hurwin and Scream get to play in the mid lane as well? It is difficult to say, but I think I'm hedging my bets. You guys saw my prediction on the waiting room. I got eUnited twice this week. I'm hedging my bets a bit towards the squad that has Baskin on it, even though I'm such a huge fan of Sanguine and what they do. Though, to be fair, maybe I need to give Hashtag a little bit more respect until we exactly see where United's at.
Well, you know that this is going to be the honeymoon phase for a new team. Whenever you get a whole bunch of new teammates, it's so fun to practice. You know, you're not dreading scrims. Not that anyone should be, but let's be real, some teams do, I'm sure. Not exactly want to scrim every day. When you're learning this much and you know, having this new experience, it's really good. Plus, you know these guys are all comfortable with one another because they've played together before. 4 out of 5 of these members, everyone but Hurwind, were on that Armada squad that took down Rival last year. So you know that they're comfortable.
First Tsukuyomi gank for Panatom. Not a whole lot coming from it, but that is some of the strength you can see of the Kusarigama, that second ability, the disarm into the stun on the back side of it, that can so often be what Tsukuyomi uses sort of as that main tool. You know, I really thought it would be the caltrops and those slows, and they are critical for him, but that's the ability that it feels so difficult to deal with from Tsukuyomi at times. Panatom not able to find a whole lot there, but at least showing some presence.
This matchup against Thor is an interesting one, too, because I actually think these two characters are pretty similar in what they want to do come mid to late game team fights, in that they are both poke-oriented assassins.
Yeah.
One of the big things about Tsukuyomi is that he doesn't have a really good ranged ability. I mean, Dark Moon Shuriken is okay, but it's really turning on those alternate auto attacks that makes a difference.
Well, Scream's the one that takes the sky, goes to look for Panatom, gets the beads out even without landing the ultimate, so now Panatom wants to come back in, but Scream has backup here in the form of Baskin into Heroin, but look who's flanking around the back of this fight, it's Yarkor, but he did too much of a flank, they just turned around and damaged him, he has to leave, but there's the pierce moonlight over the wall, first blood for Tsukuyomi here in the SPL, taking care of one, but now there's trouble from Baskin, he goes down as well, double for Panatom and the Tsukuyomi, and they might not be done yet, Scream running for his life in the right side, but stunned out by Rongyu, completely locked down, and Sanguine find 3 to start it off.
Just an overextension by eUnited. I like the idea. Catch the Tsukuyomi. You know if you can get on top of him. He doesn't have a whole lot of movement abilities to get away. He can only really slow you and steal your movement speed. But once that dunk misses and you get the beads, maybe even getting the beads is a little bit too far there from Scream. That is all the way at Sanguine's speed buff. And poor Heroin is kind of left to the wolves. That is the Amaterasu. A very difficult matchup for ISIS is this Ama, because Dazzling Offensive doesn't care about all the CC that ISIS has. It's 3 seconds, basically, of CC immunity that's doing most of your health bar. Hurry did a good job of getting his damage off. He nearly killed Yarkor, but Yarkor baits the fight perfectly, dashes away from his team, but also away from anywhere eUnited can end up chasing him. And just an overextension baits all of eUnited in. And now the Tsukuyomi has a lead. 2-0-1, he gets first blood. No relics at all for the mid-jungle of eUnited. Bit of a spooky spot. Could see Panatom try and go aggressive soon.
Certainly could. About 400 gold up over Scream, taking a look at the net worth chart. And just in a great spot. And I think that you're right to point out the overcommitment there from eUnited. I don't want people in chat freaking out too much about Tsukuyomi starting out with the 2-0-1. I think a lot of junglers are able to do that in that spot. If eUnited commit that heavily, they turn around on Yarkor, and there's a lot of abilities there, and that doesn't even kill him. That leaves Tsukuyomi in a great spot where a lot of stuff is on cooldown. Now is the point, though, where I think you start to get a bit scared. You definitely do not want to put Panatom ahead on this pick, because Tsukuyomi can just dictate the pace of games even without movement speed. It feels like he can get around the map well. He's impactful when he gets there, and if he shows up with a numbers advantage, it often can tip the scale so heavily in your favor. So Sanguine now I think have all the onus, all the ability to start moving around the map and forcing eUnited to respond.
Look at the power spike difference that Panatom has in comparison to Scream. He's got a full Jotun's Wrath in comparison to Scream's heavy mace that he's still sitting on. That's not exactly a scary point for Thor necessarily, especially when he doesn't have beads. Now Heroin and Scream both survive not having beads for a pretty considerable amount of time without being punished at all by Sanguine, but this is Sanguine at doing what they like to do sometimes, which is playing a little bit more slowly, taking their time, getting to the point where they can group up as 5 and using their teamfight prowess, which is not a coincidence that that's exactly what they draft for as well. Merlin, great team fighter. Terra, best teamfight ultimate in the game, basically. Amaterasu, known for her team fighting. It's not an accident that Sanguine gets there, and that's the way they want to play.
Blue buff being looked at now by Sanguine. Believe they were able to secure this. Thor didn't really come in. Must be up in the air with the ultimate. Scream dunks down, doesn't find much. But Gino and Baskin are looking to try and lock down one more member. Don't get much from it as the ultimate comes out from Rongyu in response. And looks like Sanguine is going to chalk that one up as a win. Blue buff around Yarkor, nothing around Baskin. So the blue buff invade successful, and Sanguine walk out without giving up much.
Tell you what, I really love this idea of Terra plus Tsukuyomi, because there are times where Tsukuyomi feels like he hard commits and just ends up dying for it as a nice stun pulls the beads from Heroin yet again. Full commits, you die, you feel like you were a little bit short on damage. Terra ult will fix all of those problems for you, lets you get some healing when you're in the midst of everybody, and even if your ult gets Aegis, when you pop out, you can still proc the Terra ult with something like your Caltrops with those small little ticks of damage. I think it's very smart.
Well, Yarkor's pretty good, but not good enough to make it out of that one. A kill eventually going the way of Scream and Baskin, though it takes a bit more work than I think they would have liked. Still no way Sanguine can rotate in there in time to trade that one back evenly. So United gets something. And no surprise, huh, that eUnited adds Baskin and suddenly there's all this action happening in solo. We really have not seen anything happening over here in duo lane at all. I think if you add someone like Baskin to your team, if Scream, from what Herwin was saying on Waiting Room, if he respects Baskin's calls and wants to work with him a lot too, then I think we can expect a lot more of eUnited trying to get stuff going over here in solo.
This is the third time, or is it fourth? It's the fourth time, I suppose, that Scream and Basket have played together. You're looking at eUnited, you're looking at Splice last year, you're looking at Armada, and now you've got them together on eUnited. So you know these two have played very well together. When they were together on eUnited, they were the best team in North America. When they were on Armada, we've covered their upset and their kind of storied history there. When they were on Splice, they looked like the best team in the world during that stretch during the midseason invitational, if you remember. So there's some history between these two that I think could really pull Scream out of the rut that he's been on so far in Season 8.
I think Thor ulted over there on the right as Netroid and Snoopy are also battling. He did, just ends up landing back in mid though, so not a lot ends up coming from it. As yet again, it looked as though they were cheating towards that right side of the map. Scream now rotating over towards left. It's certainly still impactful, but I guess I'm a fool for considering this might be a gank. They just want the Gold Fury, and I don't think Sanguine recognized it. Wrong use on the way, way too late, and eUnited, just like that, closed the gap up between them and Sanguine. Gold, no longer an issue, though. Sanguine do still have about a 1,500 experience lead. It's certainly still relevant, as eUnited just kind of catch Sanguine napping.
And that's a lot, in large part due to Snoopy holding his own in that 1v1 against Netroid, winning that trade well enough. That's what makes Rom so strong, is that even if you go completely even in auto trading, you win the trade because you can snipe them and they can't do damage to you during that time period. So if you get to 25-30%, you're in kill range for Rom, but he isn't for your damage. That's a huge deal for him.
Good wall from Scream. Baskin was certainly in trouble there. Panatom could have kept up the pressure and had been able to follow up with the piercing moonlight from a little bit closer on. But because of that wall, Panatom and Yarkora like to give it up. Maybe they weren't going to hard commit either way, but certainly helped or aided by that Thor being there. And Panatom hasn't been quite as active as I would have expected, as now they look to try and start up this Pyromancer. By start up, I mean finish. Merlin about as quick as anyone at bursting down these objectives, and eUnited end up treating, though delayed, the Gold Fury for the Pyromancer. But we're still a bit new to how Tsukuyomi works in the jungle. I'm saying a bit surprised he hasn't been more active, but who's to say that's not the pace that Tsukuyomi normally goes at?
Sure, it's certainly possible. I mean, he is a character that can win a lot of isolated 1v1s very well. Disarm and stun allows you to do that, but having both of them tied to the same ability means one beads can really negate a lot of that CC at the same time. I just think it's less about the character, though it is possible this is the pace that Tsukuyomi wants to go, and more about what Sanguine have drafted for in the way that they like to play. And that's why I think that this style that eUnited has is a little bit more objective-oriented with their ROM and with their ISIS can work out very, very well. They've got strong Guardian frontline from the Cerberus and the Kuzenbo to keep out Sanguine, if that's what they're going for. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think eUnited has a pretty cohesive draft here that also happens to line up well against things like that Tsukuyomi with the ISIS all trying to negate that piercing moonlight dash damage pretty effectively.
So we know how strong Sanguine are going to look once they make it beyond that 20-minute mark and can start to group up as 5. But we'll get our first real test of eUnited's late-game team fight, most likely, here in this set. So we know that that's where Sanguine want to go. Now they have stretched this gold lead out a little bit more. Remember, eUnited got it pretty close to even with that Gold Fury, but it started to move back out. These blue buffs have been repeatedly getting invaded by Sanguine whenever they come over, but maybe this could turn it around. Scream has gone up into the air with the Thor ult, dunks down onto Wrong You of all people. The Spirit Ball is there to help out, but he lives through it. There's the piercing Moonlight, so that means Panatom will be falling under tower, has to use beads to get away, but he is the one taking tower aggro, and somehow Scream is still alive in the back, though he is quite low. Now, Gino trying to battle up against 2 keeps them out, but what about Scream? Way up at the top, he has enough heal, and that's left Yarkor in no man's land. They get melted down by Baskin, and eUnited come away somehow with a 1-for-0.
Somehow, Hurwin just survived because he had 10 of each prot from Cloak 1. That is literally what saved his life from that. I don't know, man. That was a weird team fight. eUnited, the 2 members that have been static for this team, they're Scream and Hurry, on different pages. Scream dunks Rongyu and clearly wants to one-shot him, tries to full combo him off the Thor ult, but Hurwin's ult is really late. If we play Circle of Protection early in that spot, I'll bet you we one-shot him, but that didn't happen there for eUnited, so Circle of Protection comes out late, Rongyu gets his ult off. As soon as Rongyu gets to press 4, that fight is in trouble. But it was a great time ultimate by Baskin. It was perfectly timed as soon as Panatom got out of those dashes, picking up both Yarkor and Panatom, gets the beads out from Panatom, and eventually the Aegis because of Gino on the back end of that. A little bit sloppy from eUnited, but Sanguine not able to punish them. Pretty close, though, and I'm already a little bit concerned for eUnited just based on the item builds. No anti-heal quite yet. I mean, Scream going Crusher is really, really strong on Thor. He always talks about how, oh man, Crusher procs on Thor ult chain damage. That's OP, and it's really good. They kind of got a Terra on the other side. Some Brawler's Beat Stick would do you some good here.
Certainly would. Maybe even take away some of that self-sustain from Yarkor as well in these battles. So certainly some reasons to try and pick up a little bit of anti-heal. Maybe just not all of that a reason why it's got to be picked up right away. Still, though, look where the experience leads are starting to show up here. Shinto about 2 levels ahead of Hurwin. That's not such a big surprise. Shinto often gets a lot of farm to himself with the way that Sanguine like to split up their farm. But Netroid also with about a level lead here over Snoopy. So they've been able to get their backline carries ahead, even if the jungle support and solo are all relatively even. I wonder if that'll be enough for them as Sanguine have a bit of a grouping in left. Maybe considering trying to start up this Gold Fury. No, they want Snoopy, who has been knocked up on the left side, but Scream's gone up to the sky as well. A 2-man dunk. You try and turn around the tide of this battle.
Goes in on the hammer as well. Shinto's still alive, and a big Circle of Protection is going to keep Scream up momentarily. Rongyu's ult changes that quickly.
Snoopy also ults in the back of the fight, but no way for him to follow up. So it ends up being a 1-for-0 for Sanguine. And if this was all in service of setting them up from a Primal Fury, they're in a great spot. Not a lot of relics, though, on their side. The backliners completely out of those options here at this point, but how can eUnited afford to step in? The Primal Fury has been pulled down below half, but Sanguine reset it. Baskin to the side has been caught in the CC chain from hell, and that's gonna be the end of him. Baskin ends up dropping. Netroid gets the kill credit for it, and just like that, Sanguine now in complete control of the Fury Pit. A 2-for-0 and the objective.
A really good idea there by eUnited. I mean, it was a great dunk from Scream. You get both sets of relics from both carries. You kind of just have to take that win. Scream gets a little bit ahead of himself, and it's understandable from a jungler perspective. You feel like you just made the biggest play you can make, which is getting both carries down low, but ends up TPing in. He dies. Snoopy was on a different page. He was still on the retreat, a little bit too low, and with wasting his ultimate means that he can't be there to try and contest Gold Fury with it. And that ends up being back-to-back objectives for Sanguine, who are now all of a sudden up 5k gold in a match where their composition is really, really dedicated to grouping up and deathballing you pretty effectively. eUnited has to find a way to split up these team fights because they aren't great at handling multiple members. I mean, Snoopy is not playing something like Ho Yi that has a good team fighting ultimate. He's more predicated on hitting one person low in particular. You're not looking for Hurwin to hit multiple people most of the time. It's possible to get multi-man Circle of Protections and Spirit Balls and things of that nature, but it's really more CC setup into one person more often than a multi-man sort of stun. This is not an eUnited composition that wants to group up that much.
Oh, a heavy commitment here from Panatom. They know Scream doesn't have the ult. He used it in mid looking for Shinto. but Shito avoided it. Now a bit of trouble for Panatom, and Baskin just deletes him with all this serve damage. A little bit of help from Snoopy with the snipe as well, and this was just an odd over-commitment from Sanguine. I know they wanted Scream initially with all the CC they had, but once he got out of there with the hammer, it feels like Panatom chased him too far.
And I love the decision from Scream to not Aegis the beams, because he wants Panatom to come along for the ride. I'll Aegis the dash damage after the fact, and then we just group up and kill him perfectly. A perfect rotation in from Baskin, cancels out his Ghastly Breath to make sure he doesn't get stunned by the Kusarigama, and uses his ultimate as CC immunity and the guaranteed pickup onto the Tsukuyomi. Definitely an overextension by Panatom and the rest of Sanguine.
And a great punish there by eUnited. Wish it could change the fact they're down by 5,000 gold, but it doesn't. Still, though, shows some good signs of life here from eUnited, even in a situation where they're behind. And perhaps reminding Sanguine that they're not invincible here at this point, can't exactly overcommit and afford to be able to get away with it. I think that is part of what you have to consider with that Tsukuyomi ultimate. It can be a little bit hard sometimes to kind of keep in the back of your mind, but you're going to be committing your body on the back of that Piercing Moonlight, so make sure you know exactly where you're going to end up. Sometimes if you're hitting a lot of people, it can be hard to track, but one more thing these players have to make sure they're getting used to.
Something that I've really liked watching good Tsukuyomi players doing is hitting the backliner with their first 3 Piercing Moonlight shots, or hit as many as they can with the first 3, and then try to intentionally only hit someone like the support or the solo laner who's going to be going in and trying to hit your backline with your last shots, because you go in order of who you hit.
Right.
So if you end up only hitting the frontliner with the last one, and you could pop out near your team instead of in their backline, kind of makes the enemy carries feel like they couldn't have done anything about it, because you're in there doing damage, and then you're out really, really quickly. It's kind of a magical Christmas land scenario for that to happen all the time, but it is certainly possible.
Looks like Netroid and Sanguine considering starting up the Fire Giant. Just kind of considering. They're at the contemplatory stage here. Contemplative at the beginning of trying to start up this objective. eUnited, though, right around the corner. It's not going to let this one happen for free.
Did you grab a thesaurus during the down week, Finch? What was that?
Yeah. That's me trying to add some, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes to the cast. Not exactly sure. As eUnited doing just enough to keep Sanguine on the back foot here, not feeling comfortable starting this up. Scream even wanting to get aggressive, has used the ultimate here yet again, and ends up looking for the mid lane. Doesn't get anything with the dunk. Snoopy was there to follow up. Panatom ends up using the ultimate just to make sure he's able to get his way out of danger if anyone else is committing. And I think United do a decent job of at least forcing Panatom out, but that is 2 ultimates for 1 plus Panatom's beads.
Beads and his ult. He used it for damage mitigation there to make sure that last shot didn't end up killing him. Pretty smart. I don't know if it would have had the damage, but with that ultimate, you know for sure that you won't be able to, you won't get sniped down and die. And look, Scream has been ulting a lot. He's gone Jotun's Wrath instead of a Brawler's Beat Stick again. Still no anti-heal besides the Cerberus passive here for United, which is crazy to me. But this version of Scream is one that I vastly prefer. Shoot your shot over and over and over again. And even if he's only hitting a few of these ultimates, only if only Sanguine's rocking into a few of them, it's still really, really worth your time.
Well, I like this from Sanguine, feigning just enough presence on the right side of the map to be able to come over and grab this Fury as well. They're 2-1 in the Fury category so far, and United were not exactly grouped up to try and force the fire while they were gone. I mean, even if they did, Jingwei gets back quickly with the rapid reincarnation. Just good awareness by Sanguine. And aren't they just so good at this part of the game when the 5 of them can decide what they want to do as a unit? They can use the 5 kits instead of 1 or 2 individually, and able to find one more little bit off this map. So now up about 7,000 or so gold as this next Fire Giant fight's getting ready to start. Pyro being looked at by United, but Sanguine are here to at least contest.
And no TPs on eUnited. Baskin started Blink, so no one to back and just defend.
Scream with the ultimate again, gets to the back lane, does some decent damage. Netroid has to use the ultimate defensively, but Baskin has blinked in. Snoopy's there to provide some support, and Shinto can't live through it. Panatom falls as well. Yarkor gets 1 in return, so it's 2 for 1, but eUnited finally able to win a fight relatively cleanly. Only 11 kills in this game, 23 minutes in. Just now recognizing how little blood has been shed, but eUnited happy to win one.
But at this point, they have to back up and start clearing out these Oni waves to make sure that they don't just lose some towers and gold on the back end, which isn't a great feeling. that you win your team fight 2-for-1 and don't get a whole lot out of it. The good news here for eUnited is that, number one, some of these members could still use farm. I mean, Herwin not level 20 quite yet. Gino's still only level 14. But they've got to make sure that they are getting that farm during this time where they feel like they should have a lot more agency on the map.
Well, Netroid and Wrong Yu trying to do a bit of a bait there on the fire, waiting for someone to come in. But it was, of course, Gino, so not a whole lot comes from it. But yeah, eUnited have got to find a way to get these wins connected into something else on the back of those fights. Or else their window where they can win fights is going to start to shrink. That was an impressive one that just kind of starts off with them being the initiators on the fights. And that's something that I think is going to help United a lot, especially against teams that play a bit slower like Sanguine. If you wait for Sanguine to do their thing, it'll be hard to beat. But United kind of playing on the offbeat a little bit, just doing their own thing or continually engaging when Sanguine don't expect it.
And they've set themselves up to win this next team fight if they do it quickly. No relics at all on Netrioid, no beads for Shinto, no Aegis for Panatom. They lost some blinks on eUnited side and an Aegis for Scream. Not exactly the highest value relic on eUnited. So they're in a good position here to win this next team fight. I want to check in. I don't know if Doug can check it for me, but I think Herwin might have bought a 500 pot. I saw him glowing. Maybe it was the mantle effects, actually. I don't think he did. I think it was mantle.
Scream has gone up with the ultimate, and just like clockwork, Sanguine give up on the objective. He dunks down on the Wrong Yu, the only target available, and that does let them bring Wrong Yu down to half, even lower. But there's the piercing moonlight. Panatom is into the backline, but Hardcore's dazzling offensive is that much better. Scream falls early on. Shinto gets Herwin, and Netroid, the machine gun, has Snoopy dead to rights on the right side. Shinto gets the double, and poor Gino, just one Kuzenbo left alone. Nothing to do. It's a double for Netroid, a double for Shinto, and a deicide for Sanguine. They might even be able to close this one out. A lot of towers still up, but they got plenty of time to go push down.
So that play is just one that we've seen eUnited do before. Remember the team fight they lost on the right-hand blue buff, wherever they all-in Wrong Yu and then they lost for it? Yeah, it gets worse now when you do it late game. Just a heavy overcommit from eUnited onto the support, and they lose the game for it very, very quickly. I like the idea of eUnited's comp. I really feel like they could have won this game pretty easily. It's just when you group up underneath an Isis ultimate, you know, Tsukuyomi's coming through, he's got that piercing moonlight. All right, boys, hey, let's group up in our circle of protection. Damage mitigation, big damage coming out, a heal as well. And Hardcore goes, neat, dazzling offensive onto three of you instantly. You're going to lose that fight basically no matter what. That was just not the right target. If the ultimate isn't there for Scream, I was saying that I liked his ambition and the willingness to go for it again and again. But if it isn't there, it isn't there. Shinto and Netrioid had low relics, only beads up for Shinto. You've got to be a little bit pickier with your engagements. I think eUnited got baited by a bad engage by Scream.
I'm thinking so too. They ended up dropping down on a Wrong Yu to start that fight off, and really it did not work from there. So clearly Sanguine still looking strong here, even up against the new look eUnited. That's not over yet. Plenty more to come as we take a quick break.
Well, quick and easy for Sanguine in game number 1. The new look eUnited, some growing pains to be expected on their restart here in Phase 2 of the season in the SPL. Mifflin is with me to talk a little bit about what we saw in game 1. Miff, there's not all that much data really to look at here in this game. At 25 minutes long, and Sanguine just kind of push it through in one final team fight.
It seems like eUnited are making adjustments to their game plan, though. We saw immediately that they put a lot more emphasis on camping out that solo lane, playing around Baskin, trying to make sure that he's comfortable over there. But let's talk about the team that won, and the team that has some pretty spicy picks as well. Panatom, making Tsukuyomi's SPL debut, decides that immediately that he's gotten a little bit out-drafted. There's too much CC on the side of eUnited, so he maxes out that first ability and utilizes it for poke the entirety of the time. And he's constantly within the backline of these team fights, constantly looking for damage, using that ultimate not only for self-peel, but aggressively. This god, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him allowed to be picked again. It looked like a ban to me.
Right, it was effectively only banned was only banned in set number 1. Panatom definitely made it look good, and Scream back on this Thor. I think maybe some interesting build choices throughout the game here, maybe not maximizing the amount of damage he could have done. There was absolutely pushback from Scream here in this one. And what do you make of Baskin on his sort of return to the SPL here? He had the most kills on his team, at least.
Mechanically, Baskin didn't do anything wrong. Like, he's hitting his abilities, he's able to use his ultimate very well timed. Amaterasu, Yarkor tried to use the Dazzling Offensive a couple times aggressively, and Baskin kind of put a stop to it. I think that when you have a player like Woony Kim on your team, you need to utilize him to the best of his ability. And this is a guy who wants to hyper carry you, Scott. He wants to go in aggressive. He wants to be that dude who could deal massive damage to the backline. I think putting him on a facilitator guardian inside the soul lane might not be making the best utilization of the pieces that you have. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a completely new draft from eUnited.
Right, and you know, even outside of kind of individual performances, and I think this is one of those games for Sanguine where it's hard to look at really one specific person because we knew their team fight was just going to be so good and so difficult to deal with. And the stats relatively even here. Netrioid 305, the standout there, undying, but everyone else, they did some killing, they did some assisting, and none of them did all that much dying on Sanguine. So as far as a team goes, that's about as complete a performance, I think, as you can hope for. eUnited, though, I think back to the drawing board. They've loved some of these interesting flex picks out of the mid lane. The Isis here, this time around, a very quiet game. Out of her, you win 4,000 damage, is going to be the lowest in the game out of everyone here in this one. In a short game, at that, you need a little bit of time, of course, maybe for her to feel that full impact. But Isis not the answer. Maybe something else. I think just feels like redraft maybe for eUnited, to your point.
Yeah, just go back to something a little bit more traditional, or even play to the strengths that you were playing around before. I mean, just because you've got 2 new players on the squad doesn't mean you have to change up the entirety of your draft. These are both veteran players that they've picked up. They can fit into just about any singular team comp. I don't think you have to go towards the Isis. I don't think you have to put Scream on Thor and have him build some of the strangest items I've ever seen, Serrated Edge. But there's plenty of things that you could do to adjust it. I think that even then they didn't take any of the top priority meta picks. If eUnited want to just go back, play the style that Sanguine does, which is whatever's at the top of the tier list is what I want to play, we're going to see a lot better performance from them.
We'll see what picks and bans for game number 2 has in store. Game number 1, very quick for Sanguine. It's sort of a slow burn and then one sudden team fight. Exactly where Sanguine wanted eUnited was what Sanguine needed to really drive that point home. So great start here for Sanguine, and they'll look to compound on that in picks and bans for game number 2. Of course, the then question is for eUnited, specifically around the Tsukuyomi. I don't think Tsukuyomi necessarily ran away with the game here for Sanguine, but it looked good, and you know, the big ultimate in those team fights, lots of damage spread all throughout eUnited. So I wonder now, Mifflin, if we're in ban territory for eUnited, if Scream is not going to pick it up himself.
Look, Tsukuyomi, as you said, he didn't control the pace of that game. He really didn't, but he did absorb a lot of the attention of eUnited. Constantly, they had to be wary of the damage output that god can just threaten constantly. If you get the Tusari Gamma off, that's, what, 600 damage, a disarm, and a stun. He maxed out his 1. He was poking down Isis in the back of her own tier 1 tower for about 50% every single time he rotated throughout the center of the map. I think that this god has such a high top end and the survivability to get through all that burst damage and long-range CC through his 2 seconds of CC immunity on ultimate, that he's so strong that you would be wrong not to address it. I think that he's
Right.
also so new to the meta that it's very hard for these SPL players to really lock down how they want to play around it. I think we might have to wait a couple more weeks until we see him get locked in again, or maybe eUnited didn't really get impressed by what they saw there and they allow it through.
Right, I mean, it was sort of a piece of the puzzle there for Sanguine. Not banned out, though, by eUnited. The exact same bans up to this point for Sanguine. Very similar, if not the exact same, for eUnited there as well. So, potential to answer back with some strong pressure early here for Sanguine, depending on what eUnited want to take away. The Amaterasu for Yarkor was definitely up there. I think taking that away, not only from Baskin, but giving it to Yarkor is definitely a strong statement. Persephone is going to get banned out against Shinto here as well. So Sanguine, Myth, I mean, I don't think, despite the Tsukuyomi, whether or not you immediately go back to it, maybe you don't, the team fight worked so well for you in Game 1, not surprised at all to see them go right back to the Amaterasu.
That Ama pick, it's been a top pick for Sanguine almost always. Yarkor always very comfortable on this god. He's got a lot of survivability over there. Go to the tried and true, so you're not having to give up too much ground to the X factor that is going to be Baskin on the side of eUnited. I think it's a smart pickup. I mean, Sanguine isn't changing their play style. They don't change it for anyone. They've never hid how they operate in their draft phase. If it's in the S tier of the tier list, Sanguine's going to take it. Amaterasu fits that bill 100%. And they know that they don't have to take away one of the hunters from themselves. With Cupid and Rom still available, means eUnited likely not going to take both. Sanguine should be able to get just one of them.
Rom has been up in that S tier maybe of the tier list as well as far as physical hunters go as of late. Kuzumbo right back. So eUnited, you know, despite a loss kind of in one convincing team fight there, or maybe it's because it was a loss only because of one convincing team fight for Sanguine, eUnited maybe running back almost exactly the same as what they had as well in game number 1. At least the Rom and the Kuzumbo might be a good look now for eUnited. And it's going to be Tsukuyomi once more here as well. Has that one win under his belt up to this point, has been banned out the entirety of the rest of the day. Panatom is going to move right back to it. And again, Myth, I suppose you can't fault them here. It didn't look out of this world good, but it definitely did not look bad in game 1. So I admire some of the creativity here from Sanguine.
Starting to look like a little bit of a run-back situation. It goes back to that ISIS. It just didn't get a ton of value out of it. I'm really expecting that Sanguine, I mean, if they're not going to force any adjustments eUnited through the bans, that Sanguine's just going to go ahead and keep running what they're doing. Oh, Hurrywin, come on, man. I go on too many Twitter tirades about this god. This god of portals has a lot of variability, right? And Hurrywin is absolutely the best at playing Janus in the world, and I don't think there's any asterisk next to that. There's no real qualifiers that you have to put in front of it. He really is the best at it. But as far as how well it fits into this draft or how well it matches up into a god like Tsukuyomi, the only way Janus is stopping that second ability from Tsukuyomi is if he lands that portal at point-blank range. Easier said than done. He's going to be very easy to chase down. One of the main strengths of Janus is his ability to kind of maneuver around a team fight, get in the backline, play the pseudo-assassin role. You portal through a wall, Tsukuyomi's going to touch you with his ultimate, and you're not escaping that. It's locked on.
That's true. It's a jungler that'll stick on you unless you're able to hit some of that disengage yourself. But I suppose to your point, Hurrywin is maybe the best in the world at hitting some of that self-disengage. So definitely maybe a not fantastic matchup, but one that Hurrywin can make work here for himself. Vamana is going to get banned out once more by Sanguine. Could go back to the Cerberus maybe if you're eUnited. Baskin did the majority of the killing for eUnited in game number 1. Another Morgan, another Hellband. It's essentially a repeat here, Mifflin, except Janus not banned out by Sanguine, so Hurrywin is going to make really the first pivot here as far as changes go from game number 1. There's going to be another pivot out of the jungle and taking that Thor away from Scream.
Yeah, it's a smart ban. Scream had some pretty high-end plays in that last game. A couple ultimates might have changed the face of that team fight. A couple ultimates also just didn't really go through, but as Agger said, you got to go for it. You got to try and make those heroic plays to swing these games, especially when you're down just a little bit, like 2,000 gold. So I think that taking away the Thor is going to take away a lot of what United was working off of. Now their ranged engage is going to go down a lot, but Scream, he's a man of many hats. He's got a lot of gods inside that pool. Bastet's certainly one of them. But just raw damage potential, no real CC lockdown. This team's already lacking a lot in terms of CC. It's going to be up to Baskin to make up that hole in the team comp.
Wow, so for the first time in Phase 2, Bastet will be locked in, and it's by Scream here for eUnited. So a high bit of trust placed out of the mid lane and out of the jungle. Two gods we don't often see. Granted, Janus, when we do see him, it's usually Hurrywind, and I'd maybe even argue Bastet for Scream as well. If I looked at the composition on the right side of my screen with covering up the name, I'd assume that's eUnited. It's another late pick Merlin, though, here for Sanguine. Look, I mean, Jingwei left available, but so is Cupid, so Sanguine are going to self-change up their draft from game number 1 and lock in that Fields of Love for a little extra engage or maybe disengage.
Yeah, Sanguine just took a straight-up promotion inside that Hunter role. Cupid has been one of the most highly contested Hunter picks in general. He's got a very strong counter matchup, not only into Bastet, but also into Janus and Kuzumbo. Just that Fields of Love as the cripple field, just making sure that that engage factor isn't going to come out nearly as well. Bastet jumps in, drop ult at your feet. Well, she's not jumping back out anymore. That safety isn't going to be there. Whereas eUnited, they go back to the Cerberus. Maybe Baskin's a little bit more comfortable on that god than last game would have dictated. He was the most killingest member of his team. But again, it just seems like with the pressure that they've been putting into that soul lane, with them having so much priority put into the short lane, United that is, it would be better to put them on a pick that could benefit from it. If you pull ahead on Cerberus, you can bully a little bit, but it's not like a warrior who can constantly push you out.
All right, teams seem to be down on Cthulhu here as of late. Interesting, maybe non-switch up there from eUnited. Sanguine take game number 1 in 25 minutes. We'll go down to Finch and Aggro to tell us about game number 2.
Thanks, Dolson Miff. We are indeed moving into game number 2. Tsukuyomi being allowed through one more time here, Aggro. Does that give you a pause? I mean, I don't know that he necessarily dominated game 1, but was certainly strong. But eUnited don't move towards trying to ban it away.
I don't think it was the main factor in United's loss. I think it was the target selection on their fights, and that could have been Tsukuyomi. It could have been Anubis jungle. If they're all inning the Terra with that Thor build, they're not going to win that game most of the time. So that's just not going to work regardless of the pick. I've got no problem with them letting it through here in game number 2.
We'll get to see Sanguine, rather Panatom, take another crack at the Tsukuyomi. Meanwhile, eUnited have made some adjustments. Hurrywind is back on the Janus. I spent a lot of time workshopping this during the break. I feel like being really good at Janus is like being really fast on one of those old-timey bicycles with one of the big wheels up front. Like, it just feels like you're putting a lot of work into something with low return. How do you feel about this Janus pick here?
Just gotta go fast, you know, like with the giant bicycle wheel. Yeah, I mean, okay, it's gotta be something cooler than that, because Janus can do some pretty cool things.
That's
Maybe it's like you're doing like some BMX style like course, but with a tricycle, you know, like no one's really sure why, but I guess it can work a lot of the time for you. It is, the idea that it is high risk, medium reward, I think, is the way that I would put it. Janus can run games and win you games all by himself. And Hurrywind, as Mifflin said on the desk, is the best Janus player that's ever touched SMITE game. That is incontestable in my mind. It's just going to be difficult, especially when you look at how CC light this eUnited team is. I'm a little surprised that we see 3 sets of beads already for Sanguine. I think Aegis might just be a little bit better in this game. It's probably Gino's Sumo Slam that's threatening enough early game to force guys like Shito and Panatom and Netrioid to go into those purification beads, because there isn't a lot of CC here for United.
There are the beads coming out from Shinzo, barely saving his life up against Scream, but perhaps now Scream is the one in some trouble. Panatom getting aggressive, forcing the beads out in response from Scream, and able to retreat. He uses his as well. So yeah, there's 3 sets of beads that went down there in mid as Scream got active very early on.
All right, fair enough. Looks like beads were good enough because Panatom and Cheeto both needed them there, though I'd argue Aegis does a lot for them in that exact same spot. United is just really going to the why not just pick our signature selections? I mean, not only is it the Janus for Hurrywind, but it's Bastet for Scream. It's a little chilly in my room right now is all I'm saying, because these guys are known for these picks for a reason. They are the specialists at these gods. I mean, even you look at Snoopy's ROM, it looked a little bit rusty in game 1, but once upon a time, Snoopy was considered the best ROM player in the entire world. And I like it. I mean, eUnited, they've had a lot of struggles. They're 0-10, looking to get their first win in Phase 2. It's a brand new roster. Why not just kind of default back to some of your signature picks and go with what you're comfortable with, and kind of let the game come to you more so than trying to force something in the meta?
I think it could put eUnited in a good spot. I wonder if it might exacerbate some of the issues that we saw from Game 1, where it felt like eUnited were a bit disjointed sometimes in their engage. It felt kind of like they were going in a little bit on their own. I wonder if being on the signature picks might make that worse, but it also might help it, right? Everyone that much more comfortable and able to much more instinctively react the correct way in these situations. So some upside and some downside, perhaps, to them coming back to some of their main picks here in game number 2 and trying to forge a path for themselves. Remember, if eUnited win this set, it's their first set win all phase, 0-10. They have had some tremendous struggles so far, so it'd be really hard to do anything that can make their situation worse. It has to all be uphill from here.
And even if they don't find the win here today, I don't think I'm sure the Reddit thread will be filled with, oh, you know, this is why you dropped Variety, Keck W, like all that kind of stuff. And it's just, you really can't be results-oriented when you come to thinking about a roster change like this 1 week in. Game 1, I liked the pace that eUnited was setting. I liked their willingness to be the aggressors even when down. They just got to worry about getting the right target selection and getting the right engage more so than any engage. It kind of felt like Scream didn't see a target he didn't love in game number 1. Maybe a little bit more, it should be a little bit more picky when it comes to that in game number 2. But when he's on the Bastet, he's not going to be starting fights nearly as much as he was in the Thor. Now it's going to be a lot of counter-engaging. It's going to be Hurlwin starting fights for eUnited with that through space and time. It's going to be Baskin starting fights with his blink ults a little bit more. Those are the things that I expect to see from eUnited in game 2.
And depending on how Hurlwin plays with it, Scream could have some options to get aggressive, even if not starting the fight, and then still get back out. That's one of the big strengths, to be honest, are these portals and the ability to help your teammates disengage as eUnited show up in full force for a blue buff invade. Yarkor considering stepping up, but will not get hit in time. Baskin secures the blue, but Yarkor wants to keep the chase going. Wrong U lands the stun, and suddenly Baskin is no more. First blood for Sanguine, and eUnited end up paying for that blue buff invade.
Bit of a weird portal from Hurry on the blue. Maybe he was thinking that Sanguine were going to jump in and try and contest it and that his portal could make sure they couldn't secure it. But maybe if he had portal to get Baskin away after the fact, it would have been helpful in order to make sure that Baskin could get out. Through space and time was used to give him portals with that normal portal cooldown unavailable, so that was a good idea, but Baskin just took a little bit too much damage on the retreat. This Ama from Yarkor, man, it's so strong. It's still kind of hard to believe that teams are willing to give it to him because this pick just looks so dominant in his hands every time he gets it.
I don't know how many more times Yarkor has to prove. He's done the single-man base defenses before. He's done it all. And Sanguine are not here in their 4th place spot by some accident. Remember, they were the first seed in the first phase, and then maybe a little bit of disappointing performance for them at MSI, but still their first time in the SPL. So impressive, and it's because they're stacked with talent. They really are. All 5 of these guys make lights-out plays. I don't think Wrong U and Yarkor get near enough credit for how often they're the reason Sanguine are winning games, but oftentimes they are. It just kind of looks like it's Shinto and Panatov sometimes, but they're benefiting from some of the setup from their frontliners.
No doubt. I think there's a really good argument to be made that Yarkor is the MVP for Sanguine, even over Shinto. I think he has been that impactful for them in that solo lane. Just the way that he controls this side of the map and the way that he team fights come late game has really, really impressed me. I've really loved watching him play in that solo lane. And that's not to discount all the great things that everyone on Sanguine does. This whole team is really good. That's why they're near the top of the SPL. It shouldn't be taken any other way.
No, it shouldn't, and you know, it's too bad I say all this nice stuff about Sanguine, but I still voted for eUnited. But the mental damage I'd have taken if I voted against Baskin and he won was worth avoiding. So instead, I just went ahead and gave it to them. But certainly Sanguine a strong enough team that I think a 2-0 here wouldn't be surprising, and it wouldn't be anything for eUnited, as you kind of mentioned earlier, to feel bad about, right? I mean, this is one of the very best teams in the league. When they go up against SSG or Radiance or up against Ghost, I consider that a toss-up. Sanguine have a chance to win all of those sets. So if they do end up getting the better of eUnited here, no real reason why eUnited fans should feel as though it's the end of times or anything. Lots of time for this team to get better. I don't even know if they had a full week of practice, considering some of these guys were playing in the SEC finals like on Sunday, so certainly they've got room to improve.
It's going to take some time. It always does for a roster change, and we should be viewing what Renegades have done in the same vein. It shouldn't be, oh, if they lose on Sunday against Radiance, that they should have kept SOT. You know, that's not the way that you have to think about it. It's all about getting as good as you can be in time for placements and in time to try and qualify to the World Championships. Now, making roster changes this late into phase number 2 does put some extra pressure on these teams to perform more quickly than, you know, weeks and months away. But
Yeah.
overall, it shouldn't be a have to win now or bust sort of situation. It's okay to be in this position to go up against a team like Sanguine and to lose, as long as you feel like you're learning and growing as a team, which you kind of inevitably are no matter what's happening, even if you get kind of raffle stomped in 2 games. So I wouldn't be too worried if you're an eUnited fan.
No, not at all. Even Obey, I think, now looking much better, right? Even when they first added Sino, they didn't instantly start winning. They looked better, but it took some time for that to start getting converted into dubs up against the best. So I think what it really means is that the SPL only getting better right now as all these teams continue to improve. Now, Sanguine have started this game out at a characteristically slower pace for them, but I think this is a bit more indicative for eUnited. Perhaps they're also not looking to get that involved, as Netroid did put some decent damage into Snoopy, and are more content to wait a little while. Janus oftentimes can farm better than his mid lane opponent just because he's moving around the map faster, so perhaps eUnited want to kind of slow it down too and try and see if they can get the better of that pace. But Sanguine done slowing down. Look for the blue buff invade, and Scream being forced all the way out. Has to use beads.
Has to, because he had just jumped. Through space and time comes through. Gino actually pushed Yarkor out. Baskin's ultimate doesn't really find who he wanted.
And Panatom uses his ultimate to get right back into the fight. Baskin low, and Shinto gets him at the double as he takes care of Gino as well. Scream does have the leap to reposition and gets the kill on the Yarkor. It must have been the dot damage, but Wrong You returns the favor by taking care of the cat. So a 3-for-1 over there on the right-hand side in favor of Sanguine.
That was a series of unfortunate events for eUnited on the right. I mean, Baskin's ultimate doesn't end up finding who he wanted. He thought that he could pull Yarkor underneath the tier 2, and I agree with that assessment. It would have been free kills onto Yarkor if that had landed, but it doesn't. Gino had just pushed someone out of the way of that through space and time. Herwin's ultimate ends up not really paying off too much. And this build that Scream is going for is not conducive to fighting early. Transcendence now is not the power spike it once was in the jungle. It's still a lot of power, but no pen yet for Scream, and no CDR like it used to have right away. You need to evolve it in order to get that CDR. So Scream, you were mentioning the slower pace. I think that that's good for eUnited. Bastet is a slower starter than a character like Thor. Janus is a slower starter than a character like Isis. Everything else is the same, but your mid 2v2 has shifted into much later in the game for eUnited. So I think it makes sense for them to play a little bit more slowly. That play right there was initiated by Sanguine, and Yarkor in particular being the one to move forward.
Sanguine certainly benefiting right now from this pace, but can they keep that up as this game goes on? Shinto, though, I think making a pretty good case right now for how strong Merlin still is, isn't he? Game 1 was helping them control the objectives here, causing mayhem in that fight up between the tier 1 and tier 2, kind of helping seal it for Sanguine as well. I feel like some of the other mid laners have kind of forgotten this pick, but certainly still plenty of value to be gotten from Merlin from the Arthurian Pantheon, and Shinto showing that to us here and now. Still, not really much more action, I don't think, to be expected for these next few minutes. Kind of slow this one down, let these guys get farmed up, and they'll get to some action in a bit.
I think Merlin right now is good. He's kind of like okay. I just class Jinto as a Merlin specialist. Like, this is just a signature pick for him. Not as dire as, you know, Herwin to Janus. You know, not like no one else is picking Merlin. But the players who are playing Merlin now, Shinto, Paul, these guys are just like the best Merlin players in the whole world. If you're playing ranked or something like that, there are just better picks than Merlin right now. I don't think that he is the cream of the crop when it comes to mages anymore. I think he just fits what Sanguine wants to do. He's a mid to late game mage with a good amount of control. He team fights really well. Sanguine just funnel farm directly into Shinto's mouth at all times, and they set him up to win mid to late game, and he's really, really good at this, Scott. I do not think that people should be considering Merlin as the S tier of mages right now.
I was noticing this back in game 1 as well, but I think both these hunters take the kin size third in this build. That's something I think we were talking about a week or two ago, and where that item normally shows up in these hunter builds. But kind of as you pointed out, we're trending a lot more towards picking that item up basically as soon as possible. A big power spike for these hunters, tons of attack speed, and there are a lot of health items out there nowadays, right? Some of these items that the warriors like to pick up, even the supports with Thebes, and if you're up against a Hercules, he'll get Shield of Regrowth, at least Aurora will. I think it makes sense to put this item right here.
There just isn't a single team fight that a hunter goes, man, am I glad that I had Atalantas instead of Chins there. You know, it's like, or, you know, you buy Chins and you go, man, I wish I had something different in that fight. It's just really, really good. And it also feels good to get your most expensive item out of the way early, because oftentimes as a hunter, you're good for your first 3 items to stay in lane and farm, as what's happened for both these teams. And then right around your time you're done with like your 4th, sometimes 5th items if it's a slower game, that's when you're starting to group up. That's when you're starting to do objectives. You know, you're with your team a lot more, and you want that, and you want that extra.
Scream showing Bastet still does plenty of damage, but somehow Panatom lives through it all. Herwin trying to close the gap and does. Unstable Vortex clips Panatom, and he'll have to take a seat. Now United with the 5v4 advantage, though Herwin a bit low, 3 ultimates down. I don't think they're planning to do much on the back of this. And how many times have we seen eUnited narrowly win a fight with no real chance of doing much afterwards?
Hey, that's a pretty big win, though, for United to get the Aegis from Panatom, the ult from Rongu as well, and the Shell, and still be able to get that kill basically with ease. And you see the lack of matchup knowledge, it felt like, there for Panatom. Didn't respect Scream's pounce damage.
And there's more of it. Wrong you also getting put in the dirt. Another one for eUnited. Scream, this is one of his signature picks, man, this past set. Playing it when no one else will, and so far it's working. Baskin, though, wants to get aggressive. Feels the love from Netroid, forces the ultimate out on the other side. Snoopy using it, though, to his advantage. That brings Shinto low, and Baskin getting involved and making it work. But Yarkor does cut him down in response. But Herwin able to catch up to Netroid. Scream being hunted down by Panatom, but the slows come through from Snoopy. Yarkor gets the double, but Snoopy through the wall with the Astral Arrow. Takes care of Panatom in return. There wasn't much going on early, but all of a sudden a bloodbath here near the Gold Fury.
Set up in large part because of Scream's Bastet. A ton of damage from him, and the chase down from Baskin on Shinto was fantastic. They get both relics out from the enemy mid laner. They killed Netrioid as well. Gino has been pretty quiet so far in this set, but his playstyle has been very, very peel heavy. He has really held Snoopy's hand through the vast majority of these team fights. He has not gone overly aggressive, which was the concern in my mind for Gino coming back up to the SPL level. That was his concern, the concern that I think a lot of people had just based on what he did during his time in the SPL and on that Armada squad in the minor league. Sometimes Gino gets a little bit too dive happy, you know, wants to try and solo the enemy mid or ADC a little bit too much. He's been really, really focused on keeping Snoopy alive in these team fights. Did a great job right there, peeling Netrioid away, made sure Snoopy was safe, and then set them up for the kill onto that Cupid. I've liked the way he's played despite not having the flashiest of sets so far.
Has worked out for them. Gina's been right there for Snoopy, and I think they're the beneficiaries now of a couple of small leads. Snoopy ahead of Netroid over in the long lane. You've got Scream a good bit ahead of Panatom as well in the jungle. Gold's pretty much even, so no real advantage there, but eUnited certainly getting the experience lead here at this point and feeling pretty good about where they stand. Yeah, about 2,500 out in front. That's a good amount, though we are getting towards the mid game, but perhaps this could change things. eUnited with a big grouping on the Gold Fury, and I just don't see a way Sanguine can make it in here in time. They're burning it so quickly. eUnited grabbing the first Fury of the game and getting right back in this set.
Interesting that Scream's still using that ultimate from Bastet in order to start up Gold Furies. That's kind of the old Bastet mentality of using the cats to tank, but there he uses it as a DPS tool. That does mean that his fight is significantly worse, but I don't think Sanguine should know about it.
Yarkor gets pulled in. Yarkor in trouble, rooted by Scream, I believe, but is able to just barely make it out of there. Not in too much trouble as eUnited don't quite have the damage. Through space and time being used, though, to cut off the retreat path, and they do indeed lock down Wrong Hugh. Not quite able to get him with the sun, but Gino blinks in, pushes Yarkor against the wall. These are the tanks that are committed quite a bit of positioning and ability to try and kill, and so far, not making much headway. Panatom has shown up now to provide some support, but Wrong Hugh could be the one that ends up paying for it. Gets back underneath the tier 2 tower. Root lands on the Panatom. The snipe from Snoopy just barely can't land from that far away. And the eUnited don't have a whole lot to show for it, though they got some relics.
A lot of relics, a weird decision by eUnited, but I kind of like this strategy. I mean, are you going to try and play Sanguine's game, the slow, methodical sort of game, or do you want to just go for broke? And it seems like eUnited's going for broke. Scream just barely ends up surviving due to that beads usage. Sanguine has heard him jump right after that Pyromancer and full-on committed.
Yeah, I'm just going to hazard a guess. 7 HP for Scream making out of there. Now, who knows? Sanguine, though, able to group up and grab the mid-tier 1 in response. I think that you're right to kind of talk a little bit about eUnited's pace, right? How they don't want to play at Sanguine's speed. This kind of just taking any fight that they see seems to have Sanguine on the back foot.
It's really been tough for them to deal with now, but Sanguine seems to be ready to group a little bit better until Yarkor has now been completely abandoned. Look at the mini-map. Everyone else was backing up. That's his dash. Does have his ultimate, and he'll need to use it. In addition to some help coming from Rongu.
But good use of the Stygian Torment brings him back, but even still, Yarkor lives. And this has happened now to eUnited a couple of times where they have heavily committed to Yarkor or Rongu and can't quite bring him down. Now, they still get some value, right? Obviously, Yarkor has used the Dazzling Offensive. That's on cooldown. Doesn't have many relics left either. He has to come back in the hard way, but I'm not sure if 8 minutes from now that's still going to be all that viable of a strategy for them, or else Shinto and Netroid are going to feast in that time they're spending putting damage elsewhere.
I'd argue it's going to get a little bit better, actually, because even though Yarkor is going to get tankier, eUnited had very little pen available for that fight. Hurwind had legitimately 0 before this back. He just now finished off this Soul Reaver, so that's his first pen to speak of. So yeah, hey, I don't know. I don't get it, man. I mean, Janus is like the one character where I like Hurry's build path. Personally, I like the Spear of Deso third because I think flat pen is so important. But this build path feels really, really good on Janus. But for the love of God, mid laners, please build flat pen. It is broken.
Wrong Yu was in trouble. Fields of Love provides good peel. Through space and time, used more for damage than anything else. But Netroid is in some trouble. Panatom sticking to him, and Hurlwind can't get out of there. He's the one locked down. But what about Wrong Yu? He's slow in the back. Netroid falls as well. Baskin has the damage with the Stygian Torment, and just barely Shinto is able to make it out of there. But Baskin thinks better of retreat. He wants to get right back into the action. Snoopy and the boys have Yarkor pinned down in the back, and suddenly a 3-for-1 materializing for eUnited, starting by targeting the tanks.
And Gino just created infinite space in that team fight, and Scream really just capitalized on it perfectly. It was a great play from Yarkor in order to isolate Hurlwind and body block him off his pillar. He and Panatom combined beautifully in order to take down the Janus, but Scream just got to eat in that team fight, man. The peel from the Terra just was not there, just could not save his life because Rongu was one of the ones getting engaged upon immediately, so he had to use all of his buttons right away. And poor Netroid has really not been able to play a whole lot in this game. A large part of that is because of what Scream's been able to do on this Bastet.
Just been running, using the ultimate kind of defensively when he can. It feels its best when you're playing Cupid, when you can kind of wait on that ultimate. You can find him kind of grouped up, drop it to get real value out of that cripple, and then kind of turn the team fight around on that big ultimate. But instead, he's had to use it to save Wrong Yu. He's been pushed out of fights, using it to save himself. It's not been the ideal Cupid game for him. 0-2-2. Only above his own Terra in terms of player damage this game. eUnited have done a good job taking him out of this one so far, and now they're in position for this next Fury to spawn into the map as well. They're getting a bit aggressive, at least Scream is, in terms of his positioning to try and zone. Even the rest of eUnited drop it as well. I don't know if they realize how good a window they had to grab it, but they're going to look around to see if there's any picks to get instead.
They've got plenty of space in order to operate because very few relics available. Baskin tries to initiate on a wrong view, but quick fingies there by Ronnie puts down the 2, and that means you can't get knocked up. That includes Stygian Torment. So that's one initiation, really the only good initiation besides the Blink Kuzenbo push, now down for eUnited.
Baskin leading all players in damage. We got to imagine some of that, some fake solo lane damage, but kind of feels like he's getting back to form after a somewhat shaky game 1 there from him. He's been helping out a lot here with eUnited, and because he's been the one kind of diving the furthest, he has taken more spills than everyone else, but I think those have all been relatively valuable deaths that he's taken, as now United grouping up to try and force down this tier 2 in the long lane. Sanguine are all here to defend this, though. Not going to be the easiest tower to just try and take.
Baskin feels like he's been on Shinto duty, whereas Scream has really been on Netrioid duty a lot of the time, and it's worked pretty well for United thus far.
Yarkor, though, is stepping on the gas, gets the beads out from Scream, but now he's in no man's land and all alone. Great ultimate coming out from Gino, and Hurwind gets the kill credit on the Yarkor. Snoopy's ultimate down as well, as is through space and time, and Sanguine on the full retreat. They end up giving up Yarkor, but they hold on to their tier 2 tower for now, but eUnited come right back in, ready to re-siege it. Fire Giant around their waist. I think that might be it for Sanguine trying to hold on to this one. They fall back, but eUnited might not let them. Scream goes in aggressively first, but Sanguine do get a chance to regroup underneath the Phoenix.
Frenzy popped by Sanguine. They know they've got to try and stand and fight without a whole lot of ultimates or relics available. Speaking of ults, Baskin is back up.
And Scream is able to kill Netroid as a result, and then repositions using that leap. And the left side Phoenix, a distant memory as they take care of it easily. Panatom uses the ultimate, goes in for damage, but that's a death sentence at this point. Hurwind getting the better of the Tsukuyomi this time. And eUnited continuing to surge forward. If they can get maybe a couple more picks, this might turn into something, but Yarkor coming up shortly. Hurwind from downtown gets the snipe, and that takes care of Wrong You.
Of course it does. Of course Hurry is right there lined up for the dash. He knew the pushback. He had CCR, so it wasn't going to last that long. You know, he had that lined up.
Yeah, obviously, Snoopy able to line his snipes up in actuality, as Shinto falls as well. Sanguine have overcommitted heavily outside of their base in 10 seconds before Netroid's back up, but eUnited not going to get ahead of themselves. Still tier 2 towers up in mid and right, 2 Phoenixes as well, so they back up, take their win. They're now up all of a sudden 9k gold here, aggro, so they got control over this game.
Man, it would have been close. I think Hurry was just too low on mana, maybe, in order to do it. Scream's ultimate had just fallen off. With the towers up, as you mentioned, Netroid spawning with ult, eUnited decided to take the safe route. But a lot of times in situations where I feel like a team could end, and you go, oh, well, you know, they're still 99% to win this game. It doesn't really affect the outcome that much. I don't think eUnited's 99%. They're heavily favored, no doubt. You know, we're 75, 80% at least. But it's not guaranteed from this position. It's spooky to give up an opportunity like that, but I think it does. I think it is the more disciplined call from eUnited. It would have been very close, and if you go for the end and then you end up losing it, then it's going to feel really, really bad. And in eUnited's defense, when's the last time they lost a team fight in this game? They haven't lost one yet.
They've been doing really, really well here this game. Look at Snoopy's build as well. I thought earlier they were going with that more traditional Silver Branch bow build like you see for Netroid, but the Malice and the Fail Knot there for Snoopy, he's getting more into the %10 route with that Fail Knot Atalantas, and then the Malice there to kind of turn it into more of a crit build. How do you like this here for Snoopy?
Yeah, name a more iconic duo than Snoopy and loving CDR on Hunters. He just loves to build these kind of things. He loves building Jotun's Wrath whenever he can. And it does make some sense. One of the changes to Rom's ultimate was that he gets reduced cooldown on it every time you pick up an arrow. You add a ton of cooldown into the build, and then you factor that in. It mattered right there, didn't it? He snipes by purple, and then on the back end of that team fight, when I think everyone probably thought Snoopy's ultimate was down, he still has it up and ready in order to go in and get the killing blow onto Shinto. So it's worked out for him thus far.
Yeah, getting some value from the CDR here in the build. So Snoopy making it work. 4-0-6. And I was one of the ones a bit worried. We know what Snoopy's high end looks like, but I don't think this has really been, his phase so far, trying to fit into the support role, and even Hunter had looked a bit shaky coming in, but here against Sanguine, looking like a bit of a bounce back. He's been a huge part of this win for him. You mentioned earlier, Gino maybe a bit quiet, but quietly doing all the right things, 0-2-11. This is kind of how we thought eUnited might Voltron together and form a really scary team that Sanguine's got to try and find a way to keep out of their base.
I think everyone thinks of Snoopy as hitting his peak as a hunter, season 1 or so, that cog red team. But don't forget, a couple of years ago when that trifecta roster came together, Heroin, Sino, Ionic on that team, they were one of the best teams in NA, and Snoopy was playing like the best hunter in the world at that point. So that's still a few years ago, don't get me wrong, but it is an ancient history. There is some recent result for Snoopy in ADC. Obviously, it wasn't the greatest start for him in ADC, but he also wasn't playing badly enough in ADC to warrant getting replaced. It was more about, as Herwin said, what was best for the team.
Some action happening over here in left. Scream battling in the 2v2 alongside Baskin, and Panatom can't live through it. But what about Scream? He's in trouble too. Yarkor makes it 1-for-1 jungle for jungle, and all three Phoenixes do still stand. But eUnited trying to rush over and join with the rest of their squad. They want this weakened left side Phoenix to go down for sure. But still, Snoopy looking for damage elsewhere. Fields of Love pushes them back, but they should be able to step in now, get those last few shots. Snoopy trying to snipe out Shinto, unable to get it, but the left side Phoenix goes down, and eUnited still largely get what they want.
1-for-1 always favors the defenders, though, Finch, because Panatom, when he respawns, will be here and ready to go, whereas Scream will not be. I think Sanguine should be pretty happy with how this has gone so far.
All about defending for the next 20 seconds until he's back up, and that's a pretty good start to it. Snoopy taking a ton of damage right away, and eUnited might just have to give up on all of this right here. As you mentioned, Panatom not far away, and that's going to be the call. So eUnited now twice in a row have been able to get that left side Phoenix, have been able to get the Fire Giant, but twice in a row, Sanguine have kept them at bay, and eventually a patient team like Sanguine's going to be right back in this, ready to look to try and end it the other way.
It's not going to be all game. The Netroid really struggles to get his damage off is the other thing. That was a great play by him. He actually set up that beautiful arcane combo by wanting the one minion that was there.
They're trying to catch them off guard over here in the left lane. They're looking for Shinto, but Shinto a little bit too heads up for it. I think that play a little bit too slowly developing to catch Shinto off guard. I like the idea from United, but not quite enough.
If Hurry would have just aimed it further up the lane, he's really worried that Shinto is going to get help if he puts it too high and Shinto's able to come back into his own jungle, then it gets really hairy really quickly. But by putting it too low, you end up with a much lower risk, but also a much lower chance of success. Shinto a little bit too disciplined, stays off, pushing an extra wave against a Janus comp. But I love the idea, and what's the harm in what eUnited just did? Didn't work. All right, my ult's up in 20 seconds. We'll back up. We'll grab Fury. We'll reset anyways. That was the game plan for minute 1. And if we catch him, then maybe we get a Phoenix or end the game off of him.
Yeah, low risk, high reward, the right kind of plays. Look at Shinto's build, though, now that we're taking a bit of a closer eye at him. Karen's coin item we don't see all that much of, but I won't pretend that's what drew me in. The Heartward Amulet is the 5th item slotted in for him. And we've seen this a lot more with mid laners, who I guess are just so under duress, but they're picking up defensive options all the time now, aggro, and fitting those into the build.
When you've got a Janus ult that has threat to one-tap you, you've got a Kuzenbo who's going to be Thornsing, which is magical damage, Intuing, magical damage. A lot of your damage. Getting one defense item against Kuzenbo is huge, and Gino has not gotten a flat pen item, which I really like. It's something that Mike often does on this Kuzenbo pick, which is build something like a Divine or a Magus or a Deso in order to negate some of that, because once you get this one defense item, now this Kuzenbo has a lot less threat on you. Plus, Baskin's been diving him incessantly all set with this Cerberus.
United start up yet another Fire Giant. This would be the 3rd one of the game in favor of the United. They got it. But through space and time is used. The United want to try and drop ship in, but they don't all in commit. Sanguine, on the other hand, stay patient as well, holding on to all their relics and all their ultimates, and Heroin is down 1. In fact, eUnited are completely backing off. Sanguine feel comfortable enough to step in and try to grab this Pyromancer as eUnited reset.
Snoopy even used the beads after Yarkor dashed in and hit him with one auto. That Frostbound proc pretty scary for him. So he ends up using it. That's both Scream and Hurwin's ultimates on cooldown. It's actually a smaller deal that Hurry's ult is down between the full CDR that he has and that Chronos pendant. Scream doesn't have nearly as much CDR, so it matters a little bit more for him. It's going to take some time for that Bastet ultimate to come up, and I feel like that character, not 100% dependent on that ultimate, but she transforms whenever she has it, both literally and figuratively. She gets much, much stronger with it.
Fire Giant down below half. All the way over in left, Panatom is trying to defend that left lane, so eUnited want to put pressure out while they have the numbers advantage. Through space and time, back up again. Fields of Love comes out from Netroid as well, but still, everyone looking to fight. Wrong View finally drops his ultimate. Scream is in his as well, as Snoopy puts the snipes onto the backline. Still not enough to claim any lives for Sanguine. In fact, it's actually Gino who's quite low, and Panatom might have the top side flank. No, all of eUnited go right, so instead he just joins with everyone else. Uses the ultimate to catch up to Snoopy, but the portal takes him back through. Netroid happily takes the kill instead, and now they got the 5v4.
Without Snoopy, that's all the threat of an objective going United's way really out the window, and he's dead for a pretty considerable amount of time. Sanguine knows that they've got time to play this one slowly. Use this Terra healing. Set yourselves up to just wait around and wait until you're going to get a better opportunity, nice and healthy, before they start this fire.
Hurwin being isolated over in right, has to use the Aegis, but nowhere to go from here. Too far from a wall, and Yarkor gets another critical pick for Sanguine. And how many times has this team done it? eUnited, for the last 10 minutes, were in control, but Sanguine were biding their time, and now they're the ones starting off FG. Gino, the only one nearby. Scream and Baskin go elsewhere, so it's up to Gino to somehow strip this one away, and that just seems like a low percenter to try and make happen. So Sanguine should be able to grab this Fire Giant. Gino not even going to stick around. What a turnaround here for the Order side team.
This is what Sanguine does. They play it patiently, and they wait for their opportunity to strike. And eUnited's made a couple of positional mistakes. Snoopy trying to clear the ward was one auto away from doing so, but Yarkor TPing in made it so that he got his beads forced. Then he's really in trouble from every engagement here on out. He has not been able to stay super safe on this ROM pick. That was only his first death, but that team fight is the most important one of the entire game. Still think eUnited are in a spot where they can still easily win this game. I mean, there are 4 towers up on their side of the map. It's going to take Sanguine time to clear them out. This is the Janus gameplay, man. I mean, you just throw out a few through space and times, and you wait for one to hit. And that's how you've got to play the character a lot of times. Irwin just hasn't been able to find a backliner with that through space and time quite yet. Once he does, I think eUnited have a really good chance to steamroll the fight. If he doesn't, probably going to keep going Sanguine's way.
eUnited are nearby as the Fury goes down in favor of Sanguine. They love to go get these late game Oni Furies, who doesn't? And then try and make big plays on the back of it when they know they've got some pressure out there that they can try to work with. There are those waves spawning into the map here now. And Sanguine are positioned over near left with a couple of people trying to keep those waves pushed up. That's where the tier 1 still is, to show just how much work is still ahead of Sanguine so they can think about winning this game. Meanwhile, all of eUnited back. Looks like they are going to be trying to show some kind of defense, but maybe just around Phoenixes. I mean, we're 36 minutes into this game. No reason to give your life up for a tier 2. They'll defend at their base.
Completely agreed. You just got to play it slow and wait for Sanguine to come to you on these Phoenix defenses. And a lot of times, carries can line up pretty effectively for you when you're playing Janus. So hang around the mid-Phoenix area, make sure you're not on a ward, put a sentry right outside the area, and then just wait until they're autoing on your Phoenix. You can oftentimes get them to line up, clip 1 or 2, and that can be the difference maker. Wouldn't be surprised to see Sanguine make sure they've got at least one trailing Hurwin wherever he goes, because if that happens, it's an easy way to lose.
Panatom 0-4-8 here so far, only above Cupid in terms of the damage, just now slipped ahead of the Janus. So less value than we saw in game 1, but plenty of time to turn it around. Looks like it'll be a 4-1 split. Panatom's lurking in the middle with Yarkor actually in the middle, in mid. Panatom does rejoin the squad as Baskin blinks forward, gets the two-man ultimate, and Netroid gets pulled right in. I think he'd already used the bead, so Whirlwind gets that kill easily, and eUnited already starting off a good defense, but Yarkor is threatening the mid-Phoenix. Has to use dabbling offensive in response, but there's 3 members of eUnited here in response. There comes the ultimate out for Panatom. It does get the kill, at least onto Baskin, who falls for it, but that means now Panatom falls in trade.
Snoopy still has that ultimate, and Sanguine still has not found a way to crack the Phoenix, and they won't with this setup. Frenzy used by Rongyu as a last-ditch effort because he knows he's in trouble, but I think Snoopy might be too low on mana to use his ult.
So that means he can't follow up. Yarkor now also trying to help make the escape with some backup here from Shinto as Whirlwind trying to stay within range to get more damage. What a defense, though, from eUnited, keeping all 3 Phoenixes standing, finding kills on a Panatom and Netroid, who they've done a good job of bullying all game long. And Fire Giant's about to run out here as well, aggro. I mean, they got all those tier 2s. They're now 1 fight away from ending the game, so certainly still value for Sanguine in that, but it could have been a whole lot worse for eUnited. A good defense.
And it was really just Gino and Baskin doing their roles perfectly. Gino calls his target. I'm blinking in, and I'm pushing Cupid. Gets the beads out from Netroid, and as soon as those beads are out, they don't let them reset. They don't let them try and say, okay, watch out for Serb Blink, anything like that. As soon as those beads run out, Baskin's in. Blink, ult, insta-kill him. Netroid didn't even get a chance to get his Aegis off. That's how quickly that CC chain went. Some synergy still between these two as the former teammates there really working well together. That was pure frontline win for eUnited.
Showing up here for him in the late game, and eUnited looking more and more competitive here in this game, and we already covered it. It's not as if they have to get this win in this game or the set for things to be looking up for this squad. I mean, I don't know how often they were this competitive in the late game before. They were at times, but eUnited with a real chance to close this game out. Sanguine having to fall back through space and time. Clip Shinto, you said it just had to hit a backliner once, get the Aegis and the beads out from him, and they keep up the chase. No way out for Shinto. In the backline, Panatom looking for damage. Fields of Blood from Netroid should slow down the chase, but Scream jumps in anyway, puts some damage out. But eUnited have to start falling back. Rongyu, the only one pushing forward for Sanguine, as eUnited take their pick and leave.
Snoopy, the only one with an ultimate on the side of eUnited. Every single ult down for Sanguine. And it really is. It just takes one. And that was the perfect ultimate. Not only does it clip Shinto, but it gives eUnited portals in, which is critical to make sure that they're going to be able to keep that chase going. That's why Hurry is the Janus specialist, man. You couldn't draw it up any better than that.
Let's see how they capitalize, though. In 30 seconds, it'll just be a reset and won't have amounted to much unless they're able to do something here. Gino and Snoopy, it looks like, are taking resets. Already back there were Baskin and Whirlwind, so should be time for Sanguine to at least get set and for Shinto to respawn into the map, though not be there directly for the fight. But Sanguine are heading towards mid, pushing that wave up a bit, and then heading right back in. They'll be here to at least try and slow down eUnited if they start it up.
Panatom did get both Aegises out from Hurry and Snoopy with that ultimate after the fact, so it's not like eUnited came away completely unscathed from that fight.
Fire Giant down to half already, though. They burn it so quickly. Full phase of time used as well. And eUnited secure yet another Fire Giant here in this game. But in the back line has gone Panatom, and he shreds through Snoopy. Nearly gets the kill into Scream as well. But Scream does make it a 1-for-1. Hunter traded out for Jungle, but eUnited needed Snoopy. They wanted him to have Fire Giant. So still, I think Sanguine taking that away is at least worth something.
Big. And Panatom just goes in with that ultimate way too far for anyone to help. Wonder if Snoopy could have just ulted right away, because it wasn't the damage coming from the ultimate from Panatom. It was the Kasari Gamma right after the fact that actually got him killed. He probably dies no matter what from that position without his Aegis up, but at least get some damage on the rest of Sanguine, try and get something. Just find it hard to believe that there has not been a use for that Astral Barrage in the last, 15 minutes? It's been since Snoopy cast that ability, it feels like. Probably not quite that long, but at least the last 2 or 3 fights have all gone without Snoopy using that ultimate. The last one was without mana, but overall, got to find a way to get that damage off. It's a huge reason why ROM is so good right now, is because of how guaranteed that damage feels at times.
Well, once again, playing around the ultimate, and once again, it's Shinto getting deleted. eUnited find him with the through space of time, and that's why Heroine's the best when it comes to playing Janus. Rongu in some trouble, but Netroid provides the peel with the Fields of Love. But Baskin goes through the portal, can't find the stun, but they still have the 5v4 advantage once Snoopy joins up. Get the mid-wave pushed up. None of the mid-waves are here, actually. That's going to stifle some of this aggression. But once they're pushed up, eUnited should have a small advantage.
Feels like it just took Heroine a little bit of time to calibrate the rocket launcher onto Shinto's back, because the last few ultimates have found their mark perfectly. And even with that magic defense for Shinto, because Hurry has 40% pen, it just hasn't mattered.
Not at all. eUnited now ready to fight. They've got 2 in left, 3 in mid. They send Yarkor over to deal with the ones in left, but that doesn't do anything to save this Phoenix. It gets shredded quickly. So Pantom uses the ultimate that closes the gap onto Scream, but Baskin deletes him. Some help from Heroine, and Panatom is gone. So is the left side Phoenix. Now eUnited can group up in mid and force this one down as well. Sanguine with just 3 members alive. Shinto not far away. Have to find a way to defend. Rongu gets the wall stun, puts the ultimate onto all 5 members of eUnited, but gets stunned mid-dash. Mid-Phoenix goes down. Big damage from Shinto, though, the second that he spawns up, and that means Sanguine keeps them out of their base, at least for now.
That's huge. I think eUnited could have maybe just bull rushed the Titan from that position, but that was a ton of damage doled out by Shinto. But look at what eUnited's doing. They're waiting again.
And Heroine has the ultimate again. They started the fight with it, and they might end the fight with it. Yarkor takes it to the face, but somehow is still alive. But Snoopy rectifies that in short order. Snipes from up top, put Yarkor down. Still with the numbers advantage in favor of eUnited. Rongu walls allow him to make it out of there, and I don't think eUnited are going to force their way into the base just yet. But they are leaning over here towards right. They're a ways away from a minion wave over here, so I think better of it and start to retreat.
Snoopy completely at this point. Gino's pretty low on mana as well. With Panatom coming back up, a bit too risky, though. We saw what happened last time eUnited decided to play it slow on a Titan push. Are they just gonna do? Okay, I was gonna say Heroine's ultimate isn't up again, is it? They're not. They're just gonna keep rinsing and repeating on this exact same play. But if it keeps working, it keeps working. You might as well. They are gonna do it.
There's no reason to try and redraw it up, right? It ain't broke, don't fix it. And eUnited certainly don't need to fix it with the way that these last 20 minutes or so have gone for them. There was a brief moment where Sanguine won a team fight. They were the ones sieging, but eUnited deal with it well. Even though they lose all their tier 2s, they don't lose a single Phoenix. Now they're the ones right back into control. Should be able to come over to this next Fire Giant and start that up, since Sanguine have to deal with 2 waves of fire minions everywhere else. And there's not much you can do about this through space and time, right? If you're Sanguine, are you going to tell Shinto to stand better? I don't know, man. I think it's just going to hit you if Heroine's aiming it.
Hey, Shinto, get hit by a global ultimate much? Like, when it's completely not your fault? And this is where our discussion at the very beginning, 44 minutes ago, really comes into play. Is it worth the time to be this good at Janus? Yeah, kinda, because no other mage puts you in this position. None.
Wow, and Rongu is just dead here. Maybe not. Gets the dash off and is able to reposition. Fields of Love provides the peel, and Snoopy goes elsewhere with the snipes, but they do have the portals to close the gap. Panatom falls first. Rongu in the backline gets cut off by that ultimate from Gino. Actually doesn't get knocked up thanks to those pillars, providing him some backup, and Rongu still standing. Couldn't make a good doctor if I can't tell if he's dead or not. Heroine catches up, though, and eventually gets the kill. So it's 2 for 0 in favor of eUnited. Gino delivers one more to them, takes a ton of damage, delivers the stun, though, all the way back to Baskin, and Yarkor gets 1, but eUnited still with the 4v3. Both those low health bars, they're just going to fall back.
Man, another fight where you feel like eUnited's right about to win the game, but Sanguine do enough to hang on. They lose Panatom and Rongu very quickly, but Shinto and Netroid staying up is key. Scream has managed to evade detection very, very well here in this blue buff, but I don't know how much help is really coming. It looks like it's just Snoopy, Heroine a little bit further behind.
So eUnited start to fall back towards this fire, and Sanguine are going to have to be a bit more careful walking around the jungle. They can't see what we see But eUnited have been lurking. Fire Giant very, very low. Scream jumps in right away, puts great damage onto Netroid, and another Janus ultimate. You gotta be kidding me, as Hurwin seems to connect them all. Scream, on the other hand, falls to the Fire Giant. Netroid gets credit from the grave, and that does put a bit of a damper on things here for eUnited. But there's the Stygian Torment. That brings your core back in. eUnited get the objective, and just barely the Amaterasu makes it out.
Man, that is so unfortunate for eUnited. That portal was ready from Hurwin, but it was actually just the mantle proc from Yarkor that gave him CC immunity, so he didn't drop into it. That could have been another kill for the Chaos side. But still, that's 3 members now with EFG. None for Gino. It was secured right as he was spawning. Not having it on Scream is a kind of a big deal, though. I mean, he's a big part of being able to split push these Phoenixes and win his 1v1. He has really dominated Panatom in these 1v1s so far. That last team fight, he completely one-shot Panatom through his damage mitigation while casting Piercing Moonlight, because Bastet damage is kind of nuts. No matter what you say about the character, she can pump out the deeps.
Baskin been a part of 23 kills, Scream a part of 24, through space and time, finds Panatom, goes to that Piercing Moonlight, and is able to redirect it back towards Netroid. That's great awareness, considering the situation, and it does force out the relics from him. Does end up meaning that Panatom falls, so United get out with another fight where they're able to find an early pick on the back of Hurwin's ultimate, but they are still low again, and Sanguine have at least put good damage into United before they've died.
And that's big that Hurwin loses both relics. I don't know if he panic beads when he was under siege from that Panatom ultimate or what, but losing both is a big deal.
Whoa, all of Sanguine are here, and it's just Baskin, so that is trouble for the long-time solo laner. Netroid gets the kill for it, but what about a potential collapse from eUnited? Gino has made his way in, but look at Scream! He's going to be able to try and backdoor this middle Phoenix, and the rest of eUnited are keeping Sanguine busy. Yarkor shows up, but it is already curtains for the mid lane Phoenix. Scream can't go in to try and make it in, but Netroid falls in the back of that fight. eUnited do enough to fragment and separate Sanguine. Another ultimate smacks Shinto in the back. Not the unstable Vortex, but should be enough for Scream to use the portals to get in there. Snoopy with the snipes takes care of it. Wrong you low in the back as well, and Scream right here to get the last bit of damage with just Yarkor left. Gonna be hard for him to defend the base alone. eUnited should be able to force us into a game 3.
Panatom's coming up, and he has that ultimate, but I don't think it's going to be in time here, Finch.
It shouldn't be. Titan's too low, and eUnited able to do it with their new look. Baskin, Gino, and Snoopy back in their roles. They take care of Sanguine and force us all the way to a 3rd game.
Man, I had to get my jacket at some point during that game. It was so, I mean, you see Scream popping off on the Bastet, Janus, Hurwin, I mean, just slamming everyone with ultimates. I was freezing in here during this game, but it took eUnited a long time. They eventually find a way to close it out. Panatom, despite having a pretty rough scoreline, did do a lot of damage in a lot of those engagements. But I really want to highlight how well Gino played in that game. That Kuzenbo was disruptive. He set up a whole lot. He peeled effectively. And he did nearly as much damage as Netroid in a 50-minute game. That's nuts.
Pretty crazy. Just crazy in general how competitive the SPL suddenly is. eUnited and Sanguine going the distance. Take a quick moment to refill your drink, go to the restroom, but get right back here because we got plenty more to go in this set.
Well, another 45-minute plus game and another Game 3 on the horizon. What a way to welcome back the SPL after the bye week. But we got to talk about Game 2 before we move on to the thrilling conclusion of this set and this day. Mifflin is still with me to talk about eUnited versus Sanguine, game number 2 here. eUnited able to pull this one out, Miff, in 49 minutes.
Yeah, it's a shame that I'm going to have to eat my words here because a lot of that does come down to just absolute max range plays from hi-rez, hitting that ultimate on Shinto, hitting that ultimate on literally everyone on the enemy team, just absolutely one-shotting him. I mean, this Janus comes through in a big way. Scream hops onto his signature pick inside the Bastet, does immense damage, and I think Agra really hit it towards the tail end of that cast. My MVP for eUnited in Game 2 is 100% Gino. This guy was an absolute menace in the backline. Disruption factor, damage output, CC displacement. He's everywhere he needed to be and then some.
Well, and this set again is really where I think, it's still not over. Sanguine's still absolutely the chance to win. eUnited, the same chance lies at their feet as well. But this set in particular, I think most people would say, all right, well, it's eUnited. They made some changes. This is kind of their first competitive set to work out some of the growing pains, as I worded it earlier on after game number 1. I think what we're already starting to see, Mifflin, is how some of this new team synergy is working. A different eUnited squad might not have made this one as long or maybe as competitive up against the team like Sanguine, who's traditionally been a little bit better in these late-game team fights. So I think this is great for eUnited and eUnited fans, regardless of the outcome of this set. It's been very competitive here up to this point. 11, 2, and 12 on hi-rez, by the way. Strong performance from him. I think you got to give shouts to Scream out of the jungle as well, nearly matching the assists of his support.
Nearly matching the assist, but dropping 38,000 damage simultaneously. He's looking really good on this Bastet. Well, we were worried a little bit in that death segment about how well United's going to be able to fight into the late game being so CC light. Well, it seems like it doesn't really matter if Scream's going to one-shot somebody and then hi-rez's going to do the exact same, but from his own base. It's going to work out no matter what. Almost every single late-game team fight that eUnited took, they took it a numbers advantage because every single team fight was engaged by through space and time. Just dropping that ultimate, Shinto gets evaporated multiple times. I mean, Finch said it. You can ask him to stand better? I don't think you can do that.
That's right. Stand just to the other side next time, I guess, is the best you can do there. eUnited have pushed us on to a game number 3. Let's delay it no further. Picks and bans for said game. Join us now. So it's been similar for eUnited, and what they've looked for. Sanguine was effectively the same outside of that Jingwei pick. Tsukuyomi, one good, one not so good. I think we've now maybe, Mifflin, seen some of the downfall of the Tsukuyomi, where you're going to pop that ultimate, and then as you have to go in. Once you hit it, if you hit somebody, you're going back in, whether or not you like it. So Panatom able to maybe find a pick here and there, but oftentimes he was dashing in sort of to his death around the end there. So I think certainly has a place, but maybe a change up here for Sanguine in game number 3. The Emoja is going to get banned out, as well as the Freya here. Honestly, Miff, I don't know if anything in the first 6 bans needs to be changed, but hi-rez carrying enough weight on that Janus that Sanguine is going to take him off the table.
I mean, you gotta. The dude played out of his mind. He completely changed the face of the game single-handedly. Even though Janus isn't one of those meta picks, even though it's not really the most consistent pick on the planet, I think if someone's going to show you that they're on that kind of a heat roll, might as well put a stop to it instantly. To speak to your Tsukuyomi point, yes, he does have that degree of variability where if he drops that ultimate, he does tap somebody, he has to go in. But a lot of the engagements that we saw Panatom take, sometimes he was going in 1 versus 5, and he just dropped so much damage coming out of that ultimate on the tail end that he was able to find trades. I'm thinking about that second to last Fire Giant where he's able to drop Snoopy down despite being surrounded by a full 5-man squad of eUnited. I think the top end of that god is so good that even if he doesn't really pop off all the time, you pull a lead in the early, you're going to be able to run with it. You get to the late game eventually, you're still going to deal immense damage. Tsukuyomi is an absolute threat.
Well, Olaron left open here as the Janus ban takes that place. So Tsukuyomi still available here, but Sanguine taking 1 away from eUnited. It's been the ROM here for Snoopy, and admittedly looked somewhat comfortable for him, so I think a strong pull away now from Sanguine. But here is the pivot. I think the Cerberus has looked good, of course, for Baskin. But I think, Mifflin, you and I, and maybe even the casters, Finch and Aggro, wanted to see this pivot where Baskin was playing something like the Amaterasu, where he can really get in there and swing some of these team fights in a more physical manner.
Yeah, this is what I want to see. This is Baskin dropping the facilitator role, taking off the weights, Rock Lee style. He's going to hop on out there, and I'm hoping to see him pop off, man. I want to see Baskin come back into the SPL in a very big way. And it's not to say that his performance on Cerberus was bad. It wasn't. He played incredibly well. He was this role player, facilitator member of the team as he tried to work his way through the front line. But now that he's on Amaterasu, we know what this god's capable of, and I think it's going to be a good heat check for Baskin himself. United also picking up the Kuzumbo. It's going to fit into Gino's playstyle. He absolutely pops off last game. Might as well go back to it. Sanguine on the other side, taking a little bit more of an interesting approach, picking up the Ola run and the King Arthur. It's a different look.
Ola run, I imagine, then would be out of the mid lane unless something, wild changes up here. So Ola run, we've traditionally, as of late, seen him sort of as the lone hunter over there in the long lane. Do you think maybe putting him mid when you got a Rom on your side makes the most sense?
It's hard to say. I think both of those gods bring similar value to either one of the roles. It depends on which one you want to have that added level of safety. I think Ola run in the long lane is going to be left alone for a little bit longer, has a much easier time farming up. Rom in mid might be able to get a little bit more pressure just because Astral Arrows is a very good tool that Ultimate is going to be able to deal with a lot of the CC that's coming his way. But against Cupid, I think you would more likely send Rom into the long lane, just because Fields of Love is such a hard to deal with tool for Ola run, whereas Rom could just head up into the air and hang out until they disappear.
And I like this change, forced change maybe, for Yarkor out of that solo lane. I love this guy on King Arthur. I mean, there's just such synergy between God and player there that I think it's going to be a blast to watch this solo lane matchup. I mean, the safety net certainly there for both, so solo kills maybe not, but as far as impacting a lot of these team fights, I think both gods have the ability to do it in maybe some slightly different ways. So I definitely like Yarkor having the King Arthur and the ability to find a different way to impact from what we've seen from the Amaterasu.
I think we might even see some solo potential if either one of those gods gets a little bit overzealous with their ultimates. If King Arthur drops it a little early on, that opens it up to Dazzling Offensive. The same can be said of the Amaterasu. But in this second phase of bans, we're starting to see a little bit more of adjustments. Tsukuyomi and Terra getting banned out by eUnited. That's all respect. And Sanguine on the exact same role, banning out the Thor and the Bastet. They're shook from Scream.
Mifflin, I mean, this is aggression from both sides is all I'm seeing. I mean, Ola run, of course, is a little bit of a safety net there with the Sanctified Field, of course, but King Arthur, Pele, they want to get in there, get in your face as best as they can. Amaterasu, Kuzumbo going to be doing a lot of the same. This has the makings of a very fun and exciting team fight style aggression, I think, game to watch here. Xingqian to round out the draft, presumably for Rongyu over there on the long lane. Sanguine now have all 5 locked in. Do you like what they're bringing here for Game 3?
I like it a lot, but there is a bit of a desync in the draft in that King Arthur's looking for pressure. Pele is looking for early game pressure. Rom's got a huge amount of fight potential. When you're bringing Ola-Run likely into the middle of the map, he's going to need a little bit of babysitting there. Jing Shen, not nearly as aggressive as some of the other Guardians we are used to seeing out of Sanguine. I think that maybe we see them kind of struggle a little bit as they try and find their identity in the mid-game, whereas eUnited's draft, I mean, it makes sense to me. That's all attack. Every single one of them attacking from minute 1. Ratatasker out of the jungle looking with it for that global ultimate. Cupid with the Fields of Love. Your favorite god, Hera, stepping on whoever walks in her way. Amaterasu as well. eUnited are coming out swinging.
This, Mifflin, I cannot imagine, a more exciting draft to maybe be able to follow through here. eUnited in game number 2, I think, brought up the expectations for set number 1, especially against Sanguine. More competitive than ever. Sanguine versus eUnited. Let's find us a winner.
Dave, could both of our bottom teams find a set win here today against top 4 teams? Obey, overcoming Radiant. It's now here eUnited dragging Sanguine, kicking and screaming to a Game 3 on the back of Heroine's impressive play with the Janus. And somehow Gino allowed to have this Kuzumbo again. Just no world where that should make sense. But Aggro, is your read on this the same as the devs, that we're in for likely a lot of action based on these drafts?
If you're eUnited, you're hoping so. Sanguine should be pretty happy to go a little bit later again, because, again, they've drafted a team fight that I think is stronger than eUnited's. But eUnited's team fight is not bad by any means. You've got Cupid now. Gino was fantastic on this pick. in the Kuzenbo during the team fight phase. It's really only the Ratatosker that I think falls off, come a little bit later, but it's not nearly as bad as it once was. Now he has a consistent stun on which people can follow up. I think both of these teams have good things in the early game, namely their junglers, and good things come late game, namely their ultimates out of their backline. So I could see this being another 50-minute banger or a 25-minute quick end like we saw in Game 1. We've seen both sides of the coin so far in this set, and I don't know which one we're going to get here in Game 3.
Could be either one of them easily, but if you're United, you're certainly hoping that Scream is the one dictating how this early game goes. You know, I was one of those people that really thought we'd see a lot more Ratatosker once those Acorn changes came in. He has the ability with Thistlethorn. His Whirlwind takes almost all his life from damage there from Pantom. I think he also used Beads. Yeah, he did. So
yeah, he did.
Whirlwind certainly really scared there in mid. But there's a lot of options for Rat right now with these Acorns, especially Thistlethorn, which extends out the Acorn Blast. It's easier to get the stun. But I think Scream might be able to show us why this pick has some value, even though we don't see it all that much. We've seen it a bit more lately.
It's been good. I think a lot of teams have started to play it. I do believe Scream has played it at least once. As of late, hard to remember that far back, it feels like, from before the bye week. But this pick is pretty strong. It's pretty surprised at Hurwin's Beads in the mid lane because Pantom is only level 2. Hurry knew that he had his 1 because he contested on right side mids. At least I think he threw his 1 on that side. And then he heard the 3 coming at him. So that means he doesn't have the CC and ends up losing the Purification Beads. And that can matter, especially if Rongyu ends up with an early rotation towards mid, which is exactly what I would try and do if I were him. Just know if you got a blink 2, you can kill that Hera for first blood really easily. You won't need a whole lot of help.
Another minute and 30 seconds for Sanguine to try and find a way to capitalize on that. We saw Pantom lurking near left earlier as if he was considering going for an early duo lane gank, but duo lane's kind of gotten to coast, it feels like, so far today. At least in this set, there has not been a ton of action over here. There's been a lot more towards mid solo for the most part. And I guess I'm not too surprised by this. Both of these teams are either willing to wait or want to play through their mid 3v3 or get the solo lane involved. And that's how it's looked here so far. Is Yarkor heading up towards blue. He knows it's spawning. Scream here, Pantom on the way, but they're walking all over wards. Good work to Doug there, letting everybody know. It looks like they'll fall back. Blue buff should be able to be gotten here by Scream, but no, they're going to hover nearby. Yeah, they'll go. Go ahead and decide so I can decide.
It's because Hurwin is on that right-hand side. He's hovering. Shinto was on back lefts. Can't really take that fight if you're going to get rotated on, even though Baskin was a little bit poked out.
Oh, Snoopy with the aggressive dash in, and it looks like he is the one that got dashed in on. Now, they get some return damage the way of Rongyu, but Snoopy's certainly looking worse for wear. But only Snoopy has heart bombs he can turn around, or hearts rather, he can turn around and pick up and use to heal right on up. So he should be A-okay over here in the long lane. And Acro, we talked about how this game it could be all over the place in terms of its pacing and how it eventually ends up looking. But I'm thinking if this does end up being the slow game that Sanguine want, that's more of Scream not doing enough than Sanguine doing their thing. But I feel like Rat should be able to kind of force Sanguine's hand here.
At times, yes, but at the same time, Pele is pretty similar in terms of early pressure. Not as early slanted, but just has fantastic all-in potential, much like the Ratatosker. Yarkor, or Panatom's pick here, I think is enough to deter eUnited, and specifically Scream, from just putting the pedal to the metal and really trying to ride out this early game. If that were something like Tsukuyomi on the other side, for example, what Pantom has been playing, I would agree, but with this Pele pick, I think it does enough to dissuade eUnited from trying to go all in early on. And Shinto, I mean, it's a matchup that I can't imagine feels that good for him because of Argus just dropping on top of his head. You can't really consecrate Argus away from you. You just got to hold that. I am curious on whether or not Argus gets slowed by Sanctified Field. Well, time dilated is the proper term for it by Sanctified Field, because I think he's classed as CC immune, but I don't know if that counts for Sanctified Field. I'm going to be watching for that interaction as this game goes on.
Scream is ulting though. They want this purple buff invade. Netroid pre-beats it and gets away successfully, but the heart bomb stun is there. Scream getting first blood for eUnited. Now Argus here to say hello. Sanctified Field allows the escape for Shinto, but Wrong You still very bravely right in the thick of all of this. Able to get out of there safely though with that dash, and eUnited happily going to take that first blood, and it looks like the purple as well.
And not even the back harpies are subject to invade. Panatom was looking for them, but Baskin there in order to make sure that Scream doesn't end up losing out on anything, though Panatom making sure he doesn't lose out on anything in mid. That polymorph was perfect from Heroin right when that CC immunity wore off.
Yeah, otherwise my man is dead underneath that tower, huh? Well played by Heroin to just barely be able to survive. Scream showing the strength of that Acorn stun. How often is Rat stunning two people that far apart normally without that Thistlethorn Acorn that he started with? So this is the kind of start to this game that I think we expected from eUnited. Panatom showed some more presence as you had anticipated in mid looking for Heroin, but Hurry just has the answer, man. And that means Panatom got to wait a while until he has another moment to kind of get active like that again. Meanwhile, eUnited, kind of with the cycle of their abilities favoring them, should have Scream's ultimate up before Panatom's ready to fight.
I don't think Panatom really even messed up that play in mid. A lot of times you should be holding your CC immunity in response to their out, so normally if we're fighting in the jungle, you just wait on that Volcanic Lightning until you see Heroin start to cast his polymorph, and then you can do it. But because you have limited time with Heroin going underneath his tier 1 tower, you need to fit every inch of burst you have in that little small window. I think Panatom played it as well as he could have. You just make Heroin make the perfect play, and Heroin made the perfect play. So he ends up living in that scenario.
More than a Janus one trick, it would seem, as the Hera's been looking pretty good so far. A little bit behind Shinto in farm, it seems, but nothing worth panicking about in the middle lane here for United, especially with their start. But Sanguine, no need to freak out either. The gold lead still very much even, despite this aggression. But look at this, yet again, the United want to get aggressive on purple, and I don't even think Sanguine want to show up this time. You can have it, ultimate and all, and it does indeed end up going to United.
And that's exactly what you wanted to be doing with this Ratatosker right there. Just threaten. You don't have to get kills every time. The next time, maybe Scream can not ult, just walk, and the threat of the ult will be enough. At that point, Netroid's speeds will be up, but we saw how much good that did him the first time around. It's not going to be enough to save him.
I can't believe how much less of King Arthur we're seeing over there bullying Baskin, at least in the early lanes. Gino getting a bit aggressed on here as well as Wrong You puts out the Furious Roar, but not enough for the kill. Meanwhile, Panatom had to use the ultimate defensively to get away. Argus lands on top of Shinto back in mid. Sanctified Field was a better response, though. Cut off the path for aggression, but Scream rotating back in. No ultimate, but he does have Blink, so if he wants to come into the tower, it's an option. But he elects not to. Heads back over towards right where there's farm. Could potentially even shift away blue, but maybe he got there too soon and didn't see it was up. He'll come back to mid instead.
Maybe with Baskin backing off, knows that he doesn't have a whole lot of help coming. It's just safer to go back and make sure that you don't end up falling too far behind. I like the response from Sanguine. They know that Netroid's getting pressured, and they know that they can't really match that pressure. So instead of trying to, they're getting Yarkor a little bit ahead on this right-hand side, invading on Baskin's blues. And Baskin has been behind during the laning phase every game so far in this set. It's just that he was able to really team fight very effectively in game number 2. Not that Yarkor wasn't, but I think Baskin really found a way to get in there with help from Heroin's ultimate. This time on the Ama, I think it is a little bit more important that he stays closer in farm to Yarkor than it was on the Cerberus. On the Guardian, you can kind of go, oh, well, you know, I'm a Guardian. I don't need to get that much farm. I'm going to do enough anyways. You want to be at least even on the Ama.
Heart Bomb lands onto Netroid, but Snoopy doesn't have any big follow-up. But look at this rotation. Everyone is showing up to this party, but Sanguine end up stepping back. They were rotating in, at least Shinto was alongside Panatom. They don't end up following through on it, so not much ends up coming from it. I was talking earlier about how I'm surprised we don't see more of this King Arthur pick that comes in. I know that with the Glad Shield changes, he lost a lot of what made him really difficult to deal with, but he can still stick to you in the back line. The ultimate's still great for taking someone out of a fight and lockdown. Stone at Gaia is a great second item here for him. I like Yarkor picking this up.
It's not like I see an Arthur locked in on the other team in ranked, and I'm like, yes, dude, can't wait to play against this. Like, it is still so frustrating to deal with as a backliner, which is exactly what you want your solo laner to do.
Scream goes up to the ultimate early, which is on time when it's for a blue buff defense, and that forces Sanguine to fall back. He then used the ultimate to come back towards blue, but still has not yet secured it. Sanguine are here in force as the Hunters are battling it out. Snoopy could be in some trouble if Metroid can find the shots, just gets the last one dash, gets him out of range, and Snoopy just barely still alive. Meanwhile, with the Yarkor with the blue buff around his waist, I assume Sanguine were successful. Snoopy hits the heart bomb, so Metroid's just dead. They end up trading it out.
That's huge by Snoopy. He knows he's dead right there. That's good game awareness because Netroid had backed for full boots. Snoopy had not. So with that pure movement speed advantage, Netroid is always going to get a chance to get that kill. But Snoopy plays it right, hits the 180 heart bomb, and gives him the martyrdom gift from the grave in order to stay a little bit ahead in this lane. Make sure that Netroid doesn't get some free farm time while Snoopy's on the respawn.
Snoopy looks like he spawned in just a little bit sooner, but they'll be making it to about the same time, so no harm, no foul. Sanguine, though, still the owners of about 1,000 gold lead or so. So despite eUnited looking good throughout this early game, using the rat aggressively to start moving around, look at the charts. The numbers tell us something different. Sanguine are the ones in control as this purple buff invade gets stuffed right at its inception. eUnited have to fall back, and Sanguine will be able to defend their own purple this time around. The United, I don't know, I mean, they don't necessarily have to get ahead early, but you definitely don't want to be falling behind with this comp. Sanguine in a good spot.
And Yarkor is still managing to handle this matchup really, really well. A little surprised Baskin doesn't go for a Gaia of his own against a Xing Chen and a Pele and an Olarun. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities, and Arthur has a knock-up as well. A lot of opportunities to proc that Gaia. Just that overall sustain has been in the raw health that Yarkor has gotten have been a pretty big difference maker in this lane. But Baskin seems pretty content to just wait until the team fighting phase. I think I would have liked to see eUnited try and do a little bit more to help secure his blue, but at the same time, I don't know how much more they really could have done. I like their plan a little bit more of setting Snoopy ahead more than Baskin.
Netroid rolls in, you get the ultimate trade the same way it always goes. Scream is here, drops down with the ult. Doesn't knock up much, but it does deter Panatom, so ult for ult trade. Panatom doesn't have to use his ult, but Scream uses his, so this likely has favored Sanguine. They don't have to worry about through the Cosmos for any longer.
In the 1v1, it favors Snoopy a little bit because he's got the 10% CDR from Transcendence being completed. Netroid doesn't have any CDR, but overall, you're absolutely right that it favors favors Sanguine because Scream doesn't have that threat of through the Cosmos for a little bit longer. He's at a point now in the build where he's threatening in the one-shot on just about anyone he finds.
Netroid low over here, and Snoopy still has health to pick up, so Netroid's got to make sure he's being careful. Meanwhile, Sanguine just trying to brute force down the tier 1 tower in mid. Scream has shown up, but he's the one that ends up taking damage. Sanguine, though, not able to get the tower, not able to really get a whole lot of relics either, so in the end, don't get much out of it. They end up start falling back. This has been another one of these more slower-paced games here between Sanguine and eUnited, but I don't think eUnited have had a lack of trying. Sanguine have just stuffed it a lot of the times and not given them room.
It's really this pressure on the right-hand side because with Yarkor already knocking down this tower, it's freed him up to threaten rotations early.
Gold Fury already at half, the United continuing to burn it. 2 members being zoned out by Baskin. The United get the first objective of the game. Baskin, though, stuck inside the Sanctified Field, gets just enough help to be able to make it out of there, so there won't be any counter. Scream has used the beads early to get away from Yarkor, who is on the hunt. Even some snipes coming out from Netroid, but Scream's still alive. Yarkor with the damage over the wall, and Scream goes down. Sanguine may not have gotten the objective, but they get at least 1 return kill.
A lot of relics on the back end as well. I mean, beads out from Scream, that's a big deal, especially now for Shinto, as he doesn't have to worry about getting dove at all. And I love the way this front line's playing. Rongyu and Yarkor just kind of standing here, allowing Netroid to get that tier 1 tower at least a little bit lower. Netroid so low on mana that he can't threaten staying the whole time, but at least a little bit of pressure earned. And Snoopy said missed about half a wave there, it looked like, to the tower. So not all bad for Sanguine despite losing the objective.
That was huge, though, for United to keep this game closer because Sanguine were in danger of starting to pull away with it. They certainly weren't out of control or anything, but if a little bit more had gone their way, then United would have been looking up at a real deficit. Instead, they're at this much more manageable 1,000 gold mark, which you can absolutely fight into, even if you weren't 15 into the game. But Baskin in trouble, nothing but Order side members around him. But Scream comes in with it through the Cosmos. There was some backup, and Baskin walks out of there A-OK. Sanguine thought they might have had him dead to rights, but not going to happen there.
And I like the discipline from eUnited to not overcommit because it was a good dunk from Scream. Panatom was half HP, but Shinto was en route, even though he doesn't have that Sanctified Field at the time. It's still going to be an extra body that you have to account for. And at this point in Shinto's build, he's doing a lot of damage. He's got his Typhon's Fang now. This is where Olorun starts to feel like you can really slam because your passive is actually online.
Core looking to see what he can do here towards Herwin, who has Shell and Bees. Perhaps with, of course, one of those relics, but can't get it. Two-man stun from Scream. Does allow the fight to change a bit. Now it's Baskin getting aggressive towards the backline, gets the two-man stun, and Argus is the follow-up. Very low is Wrong You, but makes it back to the tier 1. Yard Core does enough to zone, but eUnited now know that they've kind of pushed Sanguine out for a moment, that they need to reset and are low, so they head right towards Pyro. But Sanguine are still lurking around. They will not be getting this one for free. Shinto nearby, but Scream comes in again with another stun, and that puts Shinto into an awful position at the back of the fight. Sanctified Field and Consecration get him out. Panatom gets the kill on the Scream, and Pyromancer still stands.
And Netrioid finds a solo kill on the Snoopy on the left. It's all coming up Sanguine. All of a sudden, good idea on the CC chain by eUnited. They had Shinto's beats timer, and they were down, but his Aegis was still up. He gets it off in that small window where he wasn't being chain CC'd, and that is the difference. Once he gets that Sanctified Field off, he is out. Panatom with the level lead now up against Scream. This Ratatosker a little bit behind, 2 levels down to the jungler, 3 levels down to the enemy mid laner, 4 levels down to the enemy solo laner. That's a lot of levels that you're giving up on the players you're trying to kill.
This just was absolutely not the start United wanted, and no one wanted to start like this where they end up this far behind, but United might have even been able to make the argument they wanted this game to go the other direction for them to be feeling comfortable, and they got anything but. Sanguine, we know, are a team that when they get ahead, they don't often give that lead up. They know how to group, they know how to force you into bad situations, how to force down objectives, and get that lead towards the end of the game. United gonna have their work cut out for them if they're going to defend. Take a look over here at Baskin, though, just for a quick example of how the solo lane has gone. He still has not completed stacking the Warriors, blessing it's at 12.
Yeah, that's not ideal a lot of the time,
No.
and it really goes to show how dominant Yarkor was in this lane, and he just feels unkillable right now. Like, I can't envision the scenario where Yarkor falls in a team fight between this Gaia procking off of Gino and his pushing, or Scream's ultimate. Maybe Snoopy could do enough damage once he finishes off that Chins, but until then, he's kind of vibing.
Wrong You using the ult, I think, to get himself out of Snoopy. So Argus comes out in response. Wrong You still low in the back. I think recognizing that is Baskin gets the two-man stun. Force out beads from Shinto. Sanctified Field is the answer, but Herwin's already gotten rid of Wrong You. They get beyond the Sanctified Field, and Scream is able to put the last bit of damage into Shinto, but here's the response from Netroid. Can't find the shots. Trust Panatom to do it, so they make it 2 for 1. Perhaps trying to help out here as the King Arthur does lock down Gino, but Argus tries to keep Netroid out of the fight. They're going to lock down Yarkor in the back, and eUnited all at once. I get a 3 for 1 here in mid.
So that's how you kill the King Arthur before you get the Chin sides. You just take out everybody else who's relevant at the time and let him try and 4v1 you. Great idea. eUnited probably expecting Netrioid's going to think they're at gold, but surprise, buddy, they're right here. They'll grab one more before they head towards the objective.
Yeah, I was a little bit questioning the use of the beads there from Netroid since it seemed like a no-live situation, but he gets some good return damage out. Almost sets up for Panatom to find a return kill, but still, that ends up costing him there. Netroid now that the beads and obviously falling. Though eUnited don't get the Fury on the back of it, I wonder if the kill on Netroid was better than just going to do the almost confirmed and sure objective.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think Primal is just worth more to you at that point if you're eUnited. And they were doing that a lot in game number 2, you know, kind of pump faking Sanguine, going into the jungle, looping on them with Janus ult, things like that. If they feel like they could just win this fight now straight up because of the relic deficit for Shinto, then it is worth their time, but they have to confirm this or else they would have made a mistake.
Well, the fight does seem to be favoring them so far. They drop the objective and yet again want the fight instead. The chase potential from Scream is nuts, and Shinto still does not have the Sanctified Field. He's escaping for now, but Scream has the blink. Dash in, and Shinto never stood a chance. Panatom forced out, and that leaves poor Rongyu in an awful position. Gino gets that kill, another 2 for 0, and eUnited can head right back towards the Primal Fury. Our core will be here, and quite disruptive at level 19, but eUnited heavily favored to get the objective from here.
And what does it feel like here for eUnited? It feels like they are on the same page. Who's the one starting these fights? It's Baskin. He's the one who's blinking in right there on Shinto. Who's the one who's leading the charge underneath the tier 1 to dive Netrioid? It's Baskin. It is not a coincidence. This looks like how eUnited looked when they first picked up Genetics, remember? But Genetics was a mechanical liability. Baskin is not.
No, not at all. Yarkor tries to defend the FG. He's low, and right there, trying to finish it off, is Snoopy. Gets the damage, and FG lays Forgotten in the background. eUnited wanted the fight. Sanguine keeping forced to overcommit to defend objectives, but eUnited will happily drop them and take the fight instead. Now, Fire Giant likely no longer an option with Rongyu, Panatom, and Netroid all here, but I think eUnited have got to feel good about this. They were down a good amount just a few moments ago, but they made a huge swing. It's like an 8-for-1 swing in their favor. Since then, it's been impressive.
5,000 experience, they've neutralized. It's now basically even. Gold to over, near 3K, neutralized. Now basically even. And it feels like Baskin has just kind of, because he went down into the NASCC where it's just all fighting all the time, and he's absorbed that and is bringing it up into the SPL. It's just fight, 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 fight. I don't care why, but we're fighting again on FG.
Incredibly low. Fields of Love is there for the security. eUnited get the objective, and Scream's ultimate is up yet again. Ready to get up to the sky and get aggressive. Looks over for Panatom over on the right-hand side. Gets the beads out from him. So certainly worth it from Scream. And now comes the gap underneath. What a blink for Panatom. If he lives here, he's the GOAT. Arcus comes through, puts him low. And I think Panatom's out of there. That's nuts. My man should have been dead.
Should have absolutely been dead. Good play by Rongyu as well to get in there and peel. Got the beads and shell out from Whirlwind, a big deal in order to make him a vulnerable target on this sieging. But eUnited just not letting their foot off the gas. They just continue to press Sanguine and force them to be the ones to answer the questions. And this is what Baskin teams often do. They are aggressive by nature. They just are ready to go in there at all times. You think about when he was on eUnited back in the day, whenever that was under the PBM team, how that team really operated. It was aggressive the vast majority of the time. You think of how Splice looked whenever he was on that team in solo lane last year. They were predicated on grouping up for objectives early and forcing you to fight them because of early rotations from Baskin and the God selections that team was going for. This should be, in my mind, the new MO for eUnited. This fast-paced sort of team fight, because they're good at it. They're executing well so far. And Sanguine is a team that, once given the opportunity to set their feet, is very, very strong. I think they kind of got dealt a bad hand. If this is how eUnited's going to play, not only is that not exactly a favored matchup for Sanguine, but also they're the first ones to experience it. Other teams should be more ready for this style from eUnited moving forward.
And what a difference it makes for eUnited to have Baskin involved. The reason the beginning of the game was so slow and miserable for them was because Baskin was underneath Yarkor's thumb, right? There was almost nothing he could do over there. But now that it doesn't super matter how the laning phase went, he could just rotate with the team, they look entirely different. This Baskin Scream backline dive combination is a nightmare for Sanguine to deal with. It's unhealable for Rongyu for most of that damage as well. So they kind of just have to hold it. Maybe Netroid can get to the sky, but Shinto, where's this guy supposed to go? Is now eUnited with Fire Giant are going to try and spread the map. They've got 2-ish here in mid. Looks like they give up on that one and have everyone else over here in left. Now looking for the collapse. Not going to be able to grab Rongyu, who leaps out of there, so they'll settle for this tier 2.
Wonder how much eUnited's going to try and commit here. Seems like a lot, because here comes Scream.
Up in the air with the ultimate. How often is he the first one in for them, though? He elects to go elsewhere, ends up finding Yarkor in the jungle, hits him with the stun right away, and all of eUnited are here to follow up. But instead of looking at Yarkor, they zone everyone else out. So the Field of Love, a bit underwhelming because everyone else retreated, but still separates the fight nicely. eUnited now invading the red buff, already got the tier 2 and retreating, but Sanguine, no, they might not get another closer fight than this, so they're aggressing in. Gino has to use the ultimate to disengage. Argus comes out, and that crashes down right on top of Panatom to disrupt him, but Gino is stuck in a bad spot. Shinto, with the Sanctified Field, collects him, and Sanguine find an answer back.
Just too many ults wasted for eUnited to ever have a hope of winning a team fight after the fact. It was 4 ults, 4-0 from Sanguine, because Yarkor is Arthur, and his ultimate cooldown basically doesn't exist. Sanguine's got to be careful here. They might be overstaying.
I don't know if they realize how sandwiched they might be. Yarkor has been stunned. Scream's waiting for the confusion before he blinks in. He goes for Shinto, but a good consecration creates some space. Snoopy does take care of Yarkor. Wrong U grabs nothing, but they make that into a 1-for-1 and only lose the mid tier 2. I like this from Sanguine, though, huh? eUnited just forced all the momentum their direction off the back of this dive from Scream and Baskin, and Sanguine respond by the second that eUnited step out of line, all-inning them in return.
Really love the pace of this game from both teams. I mean, Sanguine, like I said, not exactly an ideal matchup for them playstyle-wise, but I think they've really answered the call beautifully.
Hey, Shinto, what you got, buddy, to answer this? It looks like just Aegis as Scream gets out of there. Snoopy responds by blowing him up, and that is it for Shinto's relics. He'll have at least the ultimate up soon, but not going to be soon enough as eUnited now come right back towards the Primal Fury. They'll have an easier time doing fire after this, and Sanguine can't get there in time to defend. So this pace back and forth, maybe slow for the first 15 minutes or so, but since then, they've been all about the gas pedal.
And think back, that is not their first Primal Fury, that's their second, which means that it's going to be really easy for them to burn a Fire Giant from this position. Not the best team in terms of DPS or secure for eUnited, but the Amaterasu helps considerably with that. If Baskin is there with them, then he's going to up that DPS quite a bit. Worth noting, though, that Snoopy does not have any lifesteal at all in the build. He's completely forgone it, really relying on that heart sustain. So if they leave eUnited's backline to tank, it could mean Snoopy's getting low.
When you're going the Transcendence build, it feels good to leave the lifesteal item out so you can build exactly like this, but I'm not good enough to make it work in my games. I trust Snoopy here instead. eUnited getting aggressive. Gino pulls Yarkor back in, but look at Panatom in the back, deleting Snoopy and showing up when Sanguine absolutely needed him. That gets rid of the Cupid and puts them into a much better position. But eUnited are already on the retreat and disengaging. Scream not even a part of the fight as Yarkor tries to keep up the aggression, but eUnited should be out. Scream will at least take the mid-tier 2 if no one rotates. And Sanguine take Pyro, but they're stuck in a weird spot. Can they afford to do fire when they don't know where Scream is? The Argus comes out from Whirlwind as well, as the Whirlwind of Brazen Steel throws 2 back towards the rest of the squad. Good damage happening on the Netro over the side from Gino, but he's all alone and no one there to help him follow up.
Oh, just in time for Netroid's roll to come up. Scream, by the way, should just have this. Oh, the TP got canceled. Yarkor got interrupted. And he's got mid-Phoenix, and he's out of there, man. No chance Panatom catches him.
Absolutely worth it for Scream. I mean, because nothing happened the other way. They lost Snoopy 50 seconds ago, and since then, they've been chilling. eUnited have keep bouncing back, and this whole set has been back and forth having it. And we talked about what a good test this is for eUnited in their first set, because they're not even at their full form yet, right? They're just landed on Namek, and Frieza's still riding around in the chair, ready to evolve through 3 more phases. This is scary for the rest of the league that eUnited already look this good.
Yeah, we're still in the hyperbolic time chamber right now, trying to train up. We aren't even angry yet. You know, you got to wait until that happens for eUnited. Just love the way that Gino and Baskin frontline in that fight. Whirlwind put out a ton of damage with a perfect Argus drop right in the midst of that as well. That was a great team fight for eUnited.
And they're going to keep the pace up. Scream goes right to the back line to punish Shinto. Has to use the Sanctified Field in response, and everyone's slow inside the Sanctified Field. But eUnited make their way back out of it. Snipes coming out from Netroid, but more inconsequential than anything as eUnited able to regroup around the FG yet again, but Sanguine have not really given them a clean enough fight where they feel like they can start up the objective. They're right here, ready to contest.
A lot of ults used on both sides yet again. Feel like that does still favor eUnited because Whirlwind has his. That's a huge deal for Hera to make sure that you have that Argus ready to go. And with how much CDR a lot of members of eUnited have, I mean, you're looking at Gino, 30% for him. Scream, he's got 10% right now. Good amount of CDR there for Baskin as well. So you're kind of okay to wait around until your ultimates are back up. Whereas Shinto, on the other hand, no CDR and a Sanctified Field cooldown that matters an awful lot. If he doesn't have that and no purification beads, the United are happy to do this reset dance once again.
They've got positioning around the Fire Giant now. Sanguine nearby. No beads, though, for Shinto is going to make this a really scary fight for him because Scream's ultimate is up again. And I know that he knows he can get back there to Shinto. Hira around to find the fruit as he goes up to the sky. Instead, he goes for Shinto. I let myself get confused there for a moment, but he knew what was up. Snoopy gets one, Scream gets the other. Netroid gets the return kill on the Snoopy. That is something. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel does control one more member, but now Netroid needs some help. Aegis only buys him time for a moment. 3 for 1. They only lose Snoopy, and the United can continue to step on the gas.
Hurry and Scream trying to win their 2v1 against Yarkor, where Gino and Baskin are up against Rongyu. Just the beefy boys left for Sanguine, but I don't think they're going to stand for long. Yarkor buys as much time as he can, but down he goes, down goes the tier 2 tower and right. And eUnited, I think they can just march down mid and go for the Titan.
They certainly can. This is where it helps to, you don't have to worry so much about missing Snoopy like you would with structures. Whirlwind can do plenty of damage to the Titan if they can make their way in. Now Shinto's up in 10, and he will have that Sanctified Field up to heal or to help. So that means it's not guaranteed here for eUnited, but the damage is coming through quickly. Gino has to back out, but it's down to a third. 2 seconds left for Shinto to get here, but it's not enough time. eUnited in the debut set with their new roster able to take care of Sanguine.
Man, I'm happy I'm not playing against you this week at Fantasy Football, Finch, because your brain has expanded. You were the low eUnited voter, and you were right, man. This team looked good. They looked like a unit in games 2 and 3. Game 1, they were all over the place, and that was the problem for them. It was Scream dictating these engagements. Game 2, it felt like it was much more Baskin-oriented on who they wanted to go on, where they wanted to be fighting, and those are the 2 games they look much, much better in. 0-10 no longer. The eUnited finally find the dub.
Yeah, who knew that all it took was adding Baskin to the roster and suddenly you look a whole lot better, even when Yarkor buyed him all in. I guess I did. I voted for him instantaneously. I'll take the credit, and we'll get it back over to Dulce on the desk to close it out.
Well, it was 6 games closing in on 6 hours and 2 upsets to bring the SPO back from our bye week. What a day it was. And it rounds out with eUnited, the team that has not won a set yet, getting a win over another top 4 team here, Mifflin. A trend to be followed today, and eUnited the most recent to get it done.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to Finch being the only other caster, or even community included, to get anything right today. Yeah, it feels good. eUnited look a lot better. They look a lot better. And it's the intangibles, I think, that the cast really hit on towards the tail end there, of Baskin really getting involved in the shot calling, figuring out who they want to go on, and then really operating around it. Scream looks a lot better now that he's not had that burden of being a shot caller. He's able to operate as a solo agent, which opens up opportunities, like looking towards that mid-Phoenix back door, essentially, that he got in Game 3. eUnited, they've really tied some things together. Their drafts are looking a lot more diversified as well. This is a new team.
6 kills for Scream, 6 for Snoopy, and then 10 assists for Baskin, Whirlwind, and Gino each. So, you know, a team effort here from eUnited. Out-teaming Sanguine is definitely not an easy thing to do, but it's exactly what eUnited did here. And Mifflin, I mean, if we really want to kind of sink our teeth into it, we figured it might be this way with this draft that eUnited had. The Ratatosker, not a pick we often get to see here at the SPO level, but Scream played it, and the team fights were better off for it.
They were, man. Scream looks really good on this pick. It's a lot more traditional as well. His build checked out all those boxes, a lot more traditional there. I think that this global ultimate is something that eUnited has really become accustomed to playing around. Usually not through the jungle. We're used to seeing it be through that Janus and mid. But with that mobility that it brings, he's often, or very often, finding his way into the back line. Very often getting onto these priority targets, disrupting the team fight that Sanguine brings. And speaking of disruption, we got to give a quick shout out to Gino as well, reprising his role in the Kuzumbo and looking like an absolute hero on it.
Agreed. Gino looked fantastic here in this set for eUnited. And I love this Ratatosker pick. We don't need to harp on it too much, but specifically against this Olarun, and a lot of what we were wondering was going to happen again against an Olarun in our first set of the day. Remember, Cyclone Spin, despite Obey getting the win, was able to kind of back off, use those actives, stay alive. I mean, Ratatosker, you have to burn the Aegis and beads because Rat, provided the ult is well placed, is going to be landing on you every single time. You don't have to work your way into the back line. You just place yourself there. So I think well drafted. Even some of the interesting flex picks that eUnited bring, that worked out in game number 2. This has got to feel good for this squad. A tough start to the phase, to be sure. Finally get themselves a win, and it's a good one over Sanguine. Snoopy, one of the guys who's moved over from ADC to support, now back to ADC. A big piece of utility for this eUnited team here today. Let's hear how he's feeling after the win.
Hello. That's absolutely right. I got Snoopy back to Hunter here for eUnited. I got that correct, right? Talk to me first. We're going to talk about all this shifting you guys have done first. But first, how does it feel just to finally get this dub on the board? I'm sure you guys knew you were capable of it, but now you actually got it.
Yeah, it feels great just to get that first dub under our belts, and to go 0-10 is always going to be rough, and to bring one back is nice. Like, we had a couple sets in the beginning where we got a win, but we never closed out the set. But being able to fully close out the set is a great feeling.
Well, how is the new team feeling? Because, I mean, I'm the only one that saw the true potential that you all had. I voted for you all to win here this set. How are you all meshing? What's Baskin's role here with the squad? How has everyone been feeling with all this shifting that's going on?
It's been really, really good. Like, having Baskin, who's a super dedicated and, like, very straightforward leader, being on the team is something we lacked for sure. And to have him in mid to late game team fights, just like calling what we're doing and calling like where we're going, is super helpful for the entirety of the team. And then with Gino as well, like I've teamed with him and Baskin and Scream, like I've teamed with all of them before, and it's like more of a it's just easier to know exactly what everybody's going to do as opposed to having to talk every little thing out. And it helps us win games, obviously, and it helps us improve and like get better as well.
Well, I think that you all are only just beginning here as this eUnited team. I think you've got a lot of room to clean stuff up from that set. Is that your read as well, that there's still a lot of room for you all to improve even further from what we saw here today?
Oh, yeah. Our ceiling is so much higher than you've seen right now, and like we're just getting started. We've had a week and a half of practice, so I'll catch you guys in a couple more weeks, and we should be still trucking along from there.
Can't wait for that time to come through. Thank you, Snoopy. And eUnited with a new look, and it's looking pretty good. Congrats on the win. I'll get it back over to Dolson. They got a couple more things to take care of.
And I love the vibe there from Snoopy, right? I mean, obviously you're going to be upbeat after a win. Obviously you're going to be upbeat after a win against Sanguine. You can just tell sort of a refreshed feeling, I think, for this eUnited squad, and for absolutely good reason here, Mifflin. Let's not forget, I mean, this eUnited team, 0-10 before this set. 5 of those losses had gone 3 games. This was the team that couldn't break that Game 3 curse. So not only did they get the win, they finally turn around the Game 3s for their favor. Here are your updated standings after day 1 of week number 8. SSG still on top. Hey, they'll be playing Ghost tomorrow. 8-3 is Ghost in there in second place. Obey and eUnited, they'll be playing later on this weekend, so that's definitely something to keep your eyes on. That's the headline match for Sunday. Mifflin, tomorrow we've got a good one. Ghost Gaming up against SSG and Sanguine against the Knights. The Knights, a team we haven't seen post-break yet. Ghost SSG, much the same. How excited are you for the matchups tomorrow?
So excited. I mean, Ghost SSG just being a headliner. This is the battle of the top. I think that everyone should be there for that. But I really think that Sanguine versus PK lineup is going to be interesting. We get to find out maybe whether or not Sanguine has been struggling a little bit. We can get a heat check and see how they stand up against PK. If Sanguine beats PK, I think it further validates this win that eUnited got today.
Agreed.
So I think it's going to be really exciting just to figure out where the league is standing post-break.
Lots of information to be gathered depending on the way the games go tomorrow. That's it for day 1 of week 8 of the SPL. I said it once, I'll say it again. SPL, we missed you during the bye week. Happy to have you back. But on behalf of myself, Mifflin, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.